Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie K, this is my big chair, and today I read the Summer I Turned Pretty series so you don't have to. You're welcome. Now, the main reason why I am covering this series today is mostly because of the recent adaptation of the third book in the Summer I Turned Pretty series, and that book is called We'll Always Have Summer, but of course in the TV show they still call it The Summer I Turned Pretty. And because of that, I wanted to explore these books today and talk about what I did like about the series, what I didn't like, and from what I can tell, how it was adapted to the show. I will say I have not seen the television adaptation of this series yet. I tried watching one episode and it was just so cringeworthy, at least to me. I understand it's a very beloved show, and I think I just mentally graduated from that kind of drama. I'm just over it at this point. But I will say at least the books were mildly entertaining at best, and we're going to explore those today. So this is part of a series that I like to call the One Star Book Club series, which is where we explore popular books and talk about whether or not they're worth the hype. This is also part of a series I like to call the series tell all, which is where I read the books in an entire series and then tell you guys about it. It's a pretty self-explanatory title, I will say, but I think it does get the point across. Now, of course, I do want to warn you guys that this is a spoiler channel, meaning that I am going to be spoiling the endings of each of these books and in a way indirectly spoiling the show. So if you are currently watching the show or reading the books, I would invite you to sign off from this video right now and come back once you have finished them. I know the show is still in the process of being pushed out to the public right now. The entire series isn't completed just yet on Hulu, so please keep that in mind. Unless you want to hear what happens at the end of the series, you might want to wait until it is completely released. Now, I do want to say that Jenny Han, the author of these books, has mentioned that the show is going to divert a little bit from the books, so who knows? Maybe I won't end up spoiling the show for you after all, but we will see when the time comes when the final episode comes out and it is revealed what the brand new ending is. And we'll get into that in just a minute. Now, before we get into the series, don't forget to leave a like down below if you enjoy videos like this one and want to see more of them. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and comment down below your answer to today's question. Do you think it's appropriate for siblings to be involved in a love triangle between someone who is non-related to them? And the reason why I'm asking you this question today is because this book does involve a love triangle between two brothers. Those two brothers are Conrad and Jeremiah Fisher, who you can see in the little corner there of the cover. Personally, I do not think it's very appropriate for brothers to be fighting over the same girl or boy, depending on your persuasion, and vice versa, for two girls to be fighting over a boy or a girl, you never know. And I just think it's wildly unethical in many ways. In my mind, I think it just shows a complete lack of dating etiquette between all these people. The fact that Belly is forcing these two men to compete over her. Two men / boys who are related. Not only related, but they are brothers. They grew up together in the same household with the same people for years. They both have had very conflicting feelings about Belly / Isabella. Yes, her name is Belly. That is her nickname in the show and the books. Is very distracting and I do not like it, but that's a conversation for another time. And I just think it really shows the lack of character that Belly has, as she is willing to string both of these men along because they both, in a way, give her what she wants, but in a very different manner. Now, of course, these two boys are very different. We have Jeremiah, the golden retriever, the fan favorite up until the very end of the series, mind you, and then we have the obligatory moody broody bad boy that for some reason is always shoehorned into a love triangle in a YA contemporary romance novel, and that is Conrad. Now, as you may probably already have guessed, I do not like Conrad as a character. He is the worst. He is like the Edward of the series if Edward wasn't a vampire. And Jeremiah, of course, is a super nice guy who gets character assassinated along the way, so that way Jenny Han can excuse why Belly ends up with the person she ends up with in the very end. I do have to say, it truly is murder on the eyes watching these people make the same terrible decisions over and over and over again, all in the name of love or fate or soulmates. It really is a wild ride for sure. We talked about soulmates in my previous video, and honestly, I think Belly is really struggling here to figure out what she wants, and that is proven by the fact that she constantly goes back and forth between these two brothers. Let me know what you guys think down below. And of course, comment down below what you think of the series. What do you think of Jenny Han? Did you like The Summer I Turned Pretty? Let me know. I'm always curious. Even if we disagree, I just love hearing your guys' opinions. Feel free to share them down below, and let's get started. Before we dive in, I do want to give some trigger warnings because even though this is a series written for a younger audience, there still is a lot of traumatizing and disturbing controversies and situations that we're going to be reading and talking about today. So first and foremost, I do want to say that one of the characters in these books does suffer and eventually die of cancer, and we also get some underage drinking. Jenny Han is very big into the underage drinking in her book, so you're going to see that a lot throughout this video. And of course, we're going to see some emotionally abusive situations, a physical abusive situation between a mother and a daughter, so please be on the lookout for that. If those are distressing things for you to read about or talk about or listen to, make sure you sign up from this video. Come back when you're in a better mental space. I don't want you guys to feel uncomfortable when you're watching my videos, so I always like to warn you guys beforehand. Unlike some authors who refuse to put trigger warnings in their books, I don't think we got any trigger warnings in this series. From what I can see from what I just read in the very beginning of this book, there were no trigger warnings present when Jenny Han published this book under Simon & Schuster, which again shows the lack of accountability that the publishing industry has as a whole. Granted, this book was written back in the year 2009, right before the term trigger warning really grew to prominence. That's maybe why the publishers didn't really feel the need to warn people ahead of time what this book was going to be about. But even then, I still don't think that's a very good excuse. These books have been updated, and they could have included a little blurb in the very beginning, warning young readers what they're about to get themselves into. I'll get off my soapbox now, and let's get into the video. Now, this is a series that centers around a young girl named Isabella, or Belly, and the summers that she spends with her brother and the Fisher boys in a nice beach house in Virginia. And like I mentioned before, this book does include a love triangle between the two Fisher brothers and Isabella. Now, this house belongs to Susanna Fisher, her mother's BFF, who is the gentle surrogate mother that Belly always dreamed of, whereas her mother is very cold, very emotionally distant, and not exactly the warm, cozy mother type. Susanna does play a bit of a manic pixie dream mother role in Belly's life. She's kind of like the fairy godmother that every princess dreams of in fairy tales. And like I mentioned before, this series really does focus more or less on Belly and her journey to figure out which of the two Fisher brothers is her soulmate or her endgame. And unfortunately, at the very end of the series, we do see that she ends up with none other than the moody, broody bad boy, Conrad Fisher. Now, this may change in the show, and of course, no one has exactly spoiled the ending yet because the ending is not yet out on Hulu, at least when I was filming this video. We'll see how the series ends up. I personally would appreciate an ending in which she didn't end up with either Fisher boy because personally, I think it's just incredibly awkward. She dated both of them at very different times in her life, and the fact that these two boys know that they both hooked up with the same girl, that has to make the next Thanksgiving incredibly awkward. I don't know how you could sit through holidays across from the person, your current wife's ex, who is also your brother. That has got to be a level of cringe that I hope never finds me in my entire life. Now to start off, we're going to look first into the very first book of the series, The Summer I Turned Pretty. Now in the very beginning, we are clued in that Belly, or Isabella, has recently turned 16. So Belly is starting to develop in the very womanly, feminine way that all girls when they're teenagers really dream of. She's really started to fill out in the upstairs apartment, and even her friend Taylor cannot help but ogle her in the way that many female friends platonically hit on or flirt with their other female friends. So she is really hyping Belly up, telling her that this is a summer that they've always dreamed of. She wants her to party, she wants her to have fun. Taylor is the party girl vibe that Belly just isn't, and these two very juxtaposed characters really make me question why Belly ever was friends with Taylor in the first place, and why Taylor was friends with Belly at all. They don't really get a lot out of this friendship, and for the most part, they are just kind of in this constant competition where Taylor is a gigantic flirt, and Belly just kind of sits on the sidelines and just watches her and kind of resents her. In a way, slut shames her for many of the ways that Taylor just thrives in this very extroverted, very flirty way where Belly really falls flat. But Belly is not flat anymore, and now Taylor recognizes that and understands that now she has some competition. But she does not let Belly know that she is a little bit afraid of the way that Belly has suddenly grown up overnight, and she is actually trying to help her friend out. She is offering to give her some nice bikinis to really really, accentuate certain body parts that Belly has now. She's also giving her skimpier outfits that Belly just isn't really comfortable with wearing. Jenny Han also has written the To All the Boys I've Loved Before books, and if you have read those books or seen the movies, you can kind of sense a pattern here between Lara Jean and Belly. Belly is very much the quintessential quiet girl. She likes to stay inside, she doesn't like to party, she is a good kid, and she is a juxtaposition to Taylor's bad girl demeanor. Whereas Taylor likes to go out and party, flirt, and have sex with guys, Belly does the exact opposite. She is much quieter, much more, unfortunately, vanilla in many ways. She doesn't really have a lot of hobbies outside of fantasizing about Conrad Fisher, which is very unfortunate to see in a book that is tailored to young women. What is the underlying message of these books, Jenny Han? That women shouldn't really have any personality outside of boys? Belly is probably one of the most frustrating young adult protagonists I have read in a while, and that's mostly because she's a very male-centered character. The only personality traits that she has are centered around the Fisher boys and which one she has decided to like that day. This girl really reminds me of Baskin Robbins and the fact that she likes to change her flavor of the month whenever the feeling suits her. She bounces back and forth between these two boys so often it feels like she's playing a racquetball romance game. I personally do not really appreciate how she treats these boys and vice versa. I don't like books that tell women, especially young girls, that the only real identity you have is centered around the men in your life. And this book is absolutely no exception to that. If you were to honestly sit me down right now and ask me to name 5 things about Belly that are not related at all to the Fisher boys, I honestly couldn't tell you anything other than the basic things like the fact that she has one obligatory BFF named Taylor, she has a brother, a mother, a father who is estranged, and she goes to these summer trips to this beach house in Virginia. That's it. Those are the only traits I can tell you about a character that I spent 3 whole books with. I honestly cannot even remember what this woman went to college for. She has absolutely no hobbies. All she does is sit in her room and fantasize about the Fisher boys all day long. And it's honestly kind of sad in many ways. And honestly, the worst part of these books, other than the fact that they are marketed to a younger audience, is the underlying message that the only thing you should really value in your life is who you're dating at that time. Relationships don't always last, unfortunately, and you should not be holding on to a relationship that is causing you more harm than good. And unfortunately, these relationships that Belly endures with Conrad and Jeremiah are way more emotionally taxing than they are healthy. We'll get into that in a moment. So Taylor and Belly are in Belly's bedroom, and Belly is packing, and Taylor is trying to sneak in her fun little outfits, and Taylor is congratulating Belly for being fuller in the upstairs apartment, if you know what I mean. And Belly is very happy that she's finally gotten her boobs, because that means now that she is a woman. Okay, I guess. Personally, I'm still waiting for mine to come in, so I guess that means I'm not a full, complete woman yet. Darn. Oh well, better luck next time. So Belly is essentially objectifying herself in this statement, and then Taylor is telling her, actually encouraging her very strongly, that this is a summer where she finally confesses her feelings to Conrad, because it is revealed in this little blurb that Belly has had a huge crush on Conrad for years. And I think her brother kind of suspects it as well, and he really does take the piss out on her. He constantly jokes about how she is always like in love with Conrad, and he doesn't really take it too seriously because to him is nothing more than a childhood crush. Sorry, Steven, unfortunately this one is going to be sticking around for a lot longer. So I will say the one thing that really irks me about Taylor's character is the fact that she's trying to push Belly to be more sexually active than what Belly is comfortable with. I never like it when people are encouraging or trying to force or coerce people into doing something sexually that they're not comfortable with. Sex is a very touchy topic for a lot of people, and I don't like it when we try to stigmatize it or even push it down people's throats against their will. Now, I grew up in a very Christian household, so purity culture was a very prominent thing in my life. I do still kind of struggle with how I view sex, and I'm still trying to work through that as well. But especially growing up, I felt like there was a very dark stigma around this very natural thing that humans and animals do. This is part of our biology. We all have these appetites, and it is technically an evolutionary trait, right? Without sex, we wouldn't be able to procreate, and we should be able to enjoy it as well. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have the people who are trying to force people to level up to the sexual prowess that they also have, which I don't think is fair either. I don't think either side of the spectrum is very good, where we try to demonize having sex or even enjoying sex at all. And on the other side, where we're trying to get everyone to be as sexually liberated as we are. Everyone has very different journeys, and I definitely did not like the fact that Taylor was trying to force Belly to prematurely step into a relationship that she is not mentally ready for. And that's totally fine. Personally, I don't think people should really be sexually active until they are much older. Not just because when you're younger, you're very impulsive, you make a lot of mistakes, and you do get into those relationships that can be very harmful or unhealthy for you, but it's also scientifically proven that having sex at a younger age does mess with our brain chemistry a lot, right? When you're doing the dirty deed, you're releasing a lot of serotonin in your brain and even a little bit of dopamine, and having those neurons fire off during this activity, it can actually change the way you see relationships, sex, and even yourself. That's why a lot of people really struggle with sex addiction, is because they maybe had sex a little bit too young, maybe were exposed to things that they were too young for, and it really carries into their adult life. And if you're more interested about learning about how sex affects our brains, I definitely would invite you to look up this book called Hooked. It is written by these doctors who have studied the psychology and the science behind sex and how it affects our brain. I would really encourage you to read it if you haven't heard of it or haven't read it before. It's really eye-opening. It was very enlightening to me. Even as a young Christian girl, it was very interesting learning about how this act really affects how my brain and how I, by proxy, do look and perceive certain things in my life when it comes to love and relationships. And in that book, the doctors who wrote it, whose names escape me at the minute, they actually wrote about how it can be very harmful having sex way too young, and you should actually wait until you have a more committed partner, which I do agree with. Before I was married, I was casually dating quite often, and I do have to say that the way that I approached dating wasn't the healthiest, and a lot of that had to do with how I viewed relationships at that time. And it wasn't until I really met my husband that I really had my first ever really healthy relationship. I'm not saying that if you're casually dating, you're never going to have a healthy relationship. And I'm not trying to demonize casually dating or hookup culture. As long as you are using protection and you're happy and having a good time, that's great. That's amazing. I applaud you. But just keep in mind that not everyone out there is here to value your mental health or to make you feel safe, fun, and protected. Just keep that in mind. There are a lot of bad eggs out there. Just avoid them when you see the first red flag, and have fun and be safe. Your PSA from your friendly neighborhood book vlogger: be safe out there, kids. Dating is not always super fun, which is one of the reasons why I'm very happy that I met my husband, because my goodness, dating was a nightmare. Also, I have found that people who usually are bragging about their elaborate sex lives are probably not having as much sex as they are advertising. Just a little side note there as well. I don't like it whenever people are trying to force their worldview or their perspective onto other people, because it just shows me that they are just trying to validate their own existence and decisions, rather than just considering that everyone's journey is different and just letting people go at their own pace. So back to the story, Belly finally gets in the car, and she and her mother and her brother are driving to the beach house. Belly and her family arrive at the house. Now, both of the families, the fathers, don't really vacation with them. They routinely come for once or twice a summer, just to hang out for a week and then immediately go back to work, letting the mothers and the kids enjoy their dad-free time. Now, Susanna is currently estranged from her husband because he cheated on her back when she got her first cancer diagnosis, which is incredibly sad, and understandably she wanted to divorce him, but for some reason he's sticking around for the long haul. Now, Belly's mother, named Beck, I believe, Now, Belly's mother, Beck, is also divorcing her husband because she's just bored of their marriage and she just doesn't want to be with him anymore, which is totally understandable if your marriage or your relationship just isn't working. You know, sometimes the grass is greener on the other side, or maybe it's just better for some people to be alone. Again, no judgment there. So Beck is going through the current throes of her divorce. The kids are kind of reticent to talk about it. They don't really know how they feel about it yet. Belly doesn't really understand why her mother wants a divorce. And throughout the rest of this series, unfortunately, Belly and her mother really do butt heads. Their relationship is very fraught and very difficult, which is why Belly is so attached to Susanna. I will say that Susanna is the best part of this entire book. She really is a breath of fresh air compared to the likes of Belly and the Fisher boys. Unfortunately, I find Belly to be a bit grating and annoying. I understand she's a teenage girl. Looking back on my teenage years, I wasn't always a peach to be around either, so maybe I am being a little bit hypocritical here. Maybe I just distanced myself so much from my teenage self that it's just kind of hard to see how I acted back then. But my main issue with Belly is that she never really changes, and that is very prevalent throughout book 1, book 2, and even into book 3. The only thing that really changes about her is who she's dating at the moment, which I find to be incredibly discouraging, because the whole point of having a protagonist in the first place is to watch how they grow and progress, change and mature throughout the entire series, and Belly never changes. She is a purely static character, very one note, very simple. There isn't really a lot of complexity or character to her at all. In fact, ironically, the one person who changes for the better is her BFF, Taylor, which is a huge surprise. In the very beginning of the series, Taylor is quite insufferable. She is the shitster of the book. She just creates drama for drama's sake. She bounces from guy to guy to guy. She strings Jeremiah along. She's not very considerate of other people and their feelings, and then over time, she eventually changes for the better. I wish I could say that Belly was the one that was a good influence on her, but considering the fact that they were friends for years and Taylor just suddenly one day woke up and decided to be a better person, I don't think Belly was a positive influence. A lot of people really think that she was. Taylor grew and matured on her own, and she became one of my favorite characters by the end, which is really sad because the whole point of following Belly and seeing the world through her eyes is so that we can sympathize with her the most, and I just could not get there. I do want to say though that the actor who plays Belly in the show does an excellent job of portraying her. It's just a character that she is trying to portray is a very young, insecure, immature person, and unfortunately, that does not change from book 1 to book 2 to book 3. So Belly and her family arrive at the beach, and Jeremiah is very happy to see her. He runs up to her like the golden retriever that he is and wraps her up in this big bear hug. Conrad is off to the side brooding. You know, there's a dark cloud over him. He's upset about something. He's always in a mood throughout this entire series. Get used to it. Unfortunately, it's here to stay. And Steven and the boys pick her up and they throw her into the pool as this little hazing ritual that boys do to girls, I guess. Whatever. So Belly has been consistently the odd one out. She is the only girl in the group, so of course she gets left out of things. It doesn't help that the boys are also a little bit older than her, so they usually go out, they party, they hang out with their friends on the beach. They don't usually invite her. Well, this year, it's actually different. Now that Belly is older and she is, you know, a little bit more developed, the boys feel the need to include her a little bit more. Also doesn't help that the mothers are starting to encourage them and push them towards involving Belly in their fun, so to speak. And throughout this book, the author does flashback to other summers back when she was 14, 10, 12, etc. to show us how the boys have routinely left her out of their fun and excluded her from the boy activities, which Belly actually says she didn't really mind. That means that she got to spend more time with the moms. She loves hanging out with Susanna. They would watch movies, have a good time together. It wasn't really a huge loss at the end of the day. Now that she's older and she has developing feelings for Conrad, she would like to spend more time with him. Conrad, of course, is very standoffish. He's very uncouth and cold towards her. Whenever they're in the pool together, he likes to riz with her a little bit. He makes fun of her. He critiques her on everything. And he actually at one point calls her out for being a little bit vain, which I find to be incredibly cruel and not at all true. Belly is not like other girls. She doesn't really care what she looks like, ironically, and she doesn't really put too much effort and thought into her clothes. Now, of course, that's changed because Belly is one of those girls who doesn't understand how hot she is and always laments about the fact that, oh, I just don't have a cute outfit to wear, or oh, I look so ugly in this. When you look at them for 10 seconds and you're like, girly, you're drop dead gorgeous. Stop. I shouldn't be performing this emotional labor to make you feel better about yourself. You're a cute girl. Guys aren't really that picky. You'll be fine. I do also want to mention here that Conrad used to be pretty easygoing as well. You saw that a little bit in the TV show, where he used to be fun, lighthearted, and genuinely a good guy, but over the summer that seemed to have drastically changed. And we learned that is because Susanna, she has relapsed. Is that the word for it? No. And we learn later on that is because Conrad found out that his mother has cancer again. It has resurfaced and it came back with a vengeance. And unfortunately, spoiler alert, she does not survive this second round of chemo, radiation, the works. And he's very upset about this because he doesn't want to see his mother suffer anymore. He's very upset about the fact that his father not only cheated on her, but also abandoned her in her time of need. Once again, another story about a lying, cheating husband who is neglecting his family, all because he wants to get some sex while his wife is currently dying of cancer. Why do these books keep happening to me? I am so triggered right now. Okay, it's a war against me personally. I feel so victimized right now, I cannot handle it. Now that Belly is older and she is more attractive, the guys tend to want to hang out with her a lot more. Jeremiah is, of course, more nice to her. He is a golden retriever. That is his entire personality trait. And he, like Belly, never really changes throughout the series at all. Conrad unfortunately falls into this trap as well because we are told that he changed. We never really get to see that. He changed from this nice guy to this bad boy. And then in the third book, apparently he also changes again off page. It doesn't make a lot of sense to tell readers that this character has changed. We don't actually get to see it in the cold hard prose. I'm sorry, I'm going to reserve my judgment for when I actually see any change in Conrad, because what I could tell from these 3 books, Conrad never really changes at all. Personally, I think that Belly is way more motivated to just put on her rose-colored glasses and ignore the signs. Conrad is a very distasteful character. And just to give you guys a little bit of an insight into who Conrad is as a person, I would like to read to you a particular scene from the book in which he is very upset about the fact that Belly is coming to the party with them. Now, once they get to the party, Conrad is flirting with this girl by the fire because they're having a little beach bonfire get together with all of these underage teenagers who somehow got their hands on some beer. How did they manage that? No one knows. And while they're at the party, Belly also meets this poor boy named Cam, who is the true victim of this story for me personally, who meets Belly, really likes her, and they get to talking. Conrad is of course very possessive of her. He gets angry while he's drunk and he gets into a fight. Before we get into Conrad, I do also want to mention that Steven is a bit of a weird character for me as well. I don't like him in the books as much as I like him in the show. In the show, he's way more tame, but in this book in particular, he decides to make comments and body shame his sister, particularly her breasts. Why are you looking at your sister's breasts, bro? It's kind of weird. So she's talking here about how Steven and Belly were arguing in the past, and Conrad had actually stood up to Steven and told him to calm down and leave her alone. Conrad had defended me. Conrad cared whether or not I was dead. Steven was mad at me the whole rest of the day, but it was worth it. It was also ironic. Steven teasing me about being flat-chested because 2 summers later I had to wear a bra, but like, for real. I don't know about you guys, but my brother has, first of all, never body shamed me, nor really cared all that much about how I looked, let alone certain body parts, so I find this to be an incredibly strange family dynamic, but whatever. So this actually does happen a little bit later on in the book, but I do just want to read some quotes that really emphasize who Conrad is as a person. So I do want to mention that at this one particular beach party scene, Belly does meet Cam and they start going out and they start dating. Now, later on in the book, we're about halfway through at this point. They're at another little get-together. Conrad is drunk, he's getting belligerent, and Cam is being the stereotypical nice guy who unfortunately doesn't stand a chance and he wants to help out and be a good person for Belly. And Jeremiah is there, of course, trying to dispel the situation. So they are getting into a fight, obviously. Conrad and some guy with a barbed wire tattoo on his forearm are arguing. The guy was shorter than Conrad, but stockier. He was packing some serious muscle, and he looked like he was like 25. Jeremiah watched, bemused, but I could tell he was alert, ready to jump in if he needed to. To Jeremiah, I whispered, "What are they fighting about?" He shrugged. Conrad's wasted. Typical Conrad. Jeremiah's not even surprised at this point, which is honestly really sad if you think about it. "Don't worry about it, they're just showing off. They look like they might kill each other," I said uneasily. "They're fine," Cam said, "but we should probably get out of here. It's late." And then Conrad starts to up the ante. He starts to really get in the guy's face and really starting to mess with him, and he's escalating the situation, of course. Belly's starting to worry about him. What if he got himself hurt? What then? I had to help. I just had to. So Belly walks over and she tries to break up this little fight. I have no idea what gives her the right to try to step in and break up a fight between 2 grown men children, but here we are. So she walks up to them and she says, to Conrad, we have to leave. Conrad pushed me out of the way. I'm sorry, but if my crush were to physically assault me when I'm trying to help him, he would not be my crush anymore. No way. He says, get the hell out of here, Belly. We're gonna leave now, she says, so she's insisting that they leave. I realized how drunk he was when he swayed a little and he tried to swat me off. Don't leave, things are just getting fun. See, I'm about to kick this guy's ass. Okay, Conrad, whatever you say. God, I hate guys like this so much. It's like, why do you need to put on this dick-measuring masculinity alpha male contest? No one's impressed, no one thinks it's funny, just stop. Honestly, it's people like this that make me realize why the male loneliness epidemic is such an epidemic. No one wants to deal with this crap anymore. It's honestly rather sad. And then the guy addresses Belly and he says, you better get this little boy home. And then Conrad answers, don't talk to her. Why? Any guy that has the audacity to look in Belly's direction is enemy number one in Conrad's book. He is so willing to be so possessive over a girl he has no interest in dating, and for what reason? Why does he feel so possessive of her? He doesn't see her as a sister. He is probably harboring some flirtatious feelings towards her. But I hate it when men really like to mark their territory to other men and tell them to back off, even for girls that they have no intention of dating, but are perfectly comfortable with stringing along for years. I just find it incredibly emotionally manipulative and also incredibly immature. Because Jeremiah is the designated babysitter for Conrad, he starts to walk over, but Conrad shook him off. But Jeremiah kept talking to him in his low voice, and when they looked at me, I realized it was about me. Conrad hesitated, and then he finally nodded. And then they start to walk away, and then Conrad turns to Cam, who is talking to Belly, and he's like, who is this guy? And then Cam comes up because he's not comfortable with the fact that Belly is going to be driving home with someone who's as belligerent as Conrad. And he asks her, are you okay to go home with these guys? Literally doing the one good thing anyone in this book has done, which is actually ask Belly if she's okay, if she's fine. None of these guys seem to care about her at all except for Cam, but of course, because he's too good of a guy, he doesn't get Belly in the end. Honestly, I think Cam deserves way better than Belly, so I think that he really dodged a bullet here, but for the time being, he's really falling in love with Belly, and unfortunately he's getting caught up in this weird, incestuous love triangle between her and the Fisher boys. So then Conrad turns around and he asks, who is this guy? Being incredibly rude and disrespectful to Cam, who wasn't even doing anything. He was just checking in on his girlfriend, and Conrad is upset that a man is talking to Belly, because of course. So that's a passage I wanted to read to you guys to give you guys a sense of what the dynamic is, the relationships between these people, the fact that Conrad is so self-destructive and belligerent all the time, and even worse, Belly actually excuses his behavior because, of course, he's her crush, so why not look at him with rose-colored glasses? Instead, you can just write off his behavior and blame the alcohol, absolving him of any and all guilt. Which was when I realized I remembered that Conrad really had been drunk, and he couldn't really have been responsible for anything he said or done that night. He probably wouldn't remember it tomorrow. It would be like it never happened. Okay, so now we're using the whole it was the alcohol excuse to absolve Conrad. At this point, he is 18 years old. He is a grown man. You are excusing a grown man's horrific actions on alcohol, which I do understand to a certain extent because alcohol does elevate and sometimes exacerbate certain situations because you have all these people on this happy juice whose emotions are running wild, their inhibitions are low, so not really thinking logically. So I can understand that a lot of people, a part of themselves that they like to hide when they're sober, tends to come out once they hit the happy juice, right? But Conrad, if his main character trait when he is drinking is that he becomes even angrier, sulkier, the worst version of himself, like the Hyde to his Dr. Jekyll. I think that's really indicative of the true character that he is. There's a saying surrounding alcohol and the way that people act on alcohol, and basically it says, drunken words are sober thoughts. Whatever you're saying or however you're acting when you're drunk is very indicative of who you truly are deep, deep down, right? Those thoughts, those words, those actions didn't just magically materialize out of nowhere. You weren't possessed by the alcohol demon, by Dionysus or anything. You were acting how you pretend not to act when you're sober. When girls drink red wine and they decide to tell you their life story, in vino veritas, in wine there's truth. People really show who they truly are when they're drunk, and and Belly should be way more scared than she actually is, especially considering the fact that Conrad does go out and drink and get drunk a lot. So this has been a consistent behavior trait throughout the entire book, and she's just ignoring it, once again putting on those rose-colored glasses and ignoring the walking red flag that is Conrad Fisher. So this is one of the many parties that we see Conrad just belligerently drink and get angry at. The one in the very beginning of the book where Belly meets Cam, she does get in an altercation because of Conrad. He puts her in danger constantly, and she never ever lets that affect how she feels about him. She simps for this guy so hard, and he's putting her in harm's way. So what happens? Like many other things that happen at these parties, Conrad drinks. He gets into an altercation with another man, of course, because he needs to overcompensate for his lack of humanity, I guess. And he strikes out and he starts fighting with this guy. Belly tries to intercept and stop the fight. And what happens? She gets punched in the face. Now, while I do kind of feel bad for Belly, this part of the book was actually really funny. It did make me laugh a little bit. I'm sorry. I know that makes me a terrible person, but I was just thinking, girly, this is the consequences of your actions. You cannot step in. You're like this big. You're tiny. You're petite. You need to sit this one out. You cannot be his babysitter and his mother and his caretaker. That is just so strange to me. And if you want someone to intercede on his behalf, for the love of God, get Stephen or Jeremiah. They're way more capable. We just saw how capable Jeremiah is at talking Conrad down off of that ledge. He is a much better person for this job. Let him figure it out. You're terrible at this. Conrad does not respect you enough to even give your opinion or your voice any weight at all to his decision making. Obviously, anytime Belly tries to do something or talk to him or suggest something or try to work things out and compromise, Conrad does not listen at all. He is a terrible partner, a terrible friend, and a terrible brother, and honestly, I feel like all these people should just cut him out of their lives, but of course, because Conrad is the main character of the story, they can't do that. So after Belly gets punched in the face, she goes home. Conrad begrudgingly apologizes for getting her involved in this, and that's when she truly starts to date Cam, because at this point she realizes that Conrad doesn't really feel for her the way that she feels about him. She goes through her mourning period, realizes that, hey, there's plenty more fish in the sea, let me try this thing out with Cam. Now, the entire time that Belly and Cam were dating, I just felt like she was just using him to make Conrad jealous, and I think that that thought was a little bit justified, because she never really took Cam that seriously. She kind of pretended to be this super supportive, amazing girlfriend. She was putting on this front, like the best Belly she could be front, but that wasn't who she truly was at her core, right? She really loves Conrad and she just can't get over him and set him aside for a guy who genuinely likes her and who is a good fit for her. He is the, what I like to call the good on paper guy, kind of like that one other character in To All the Boys I Loved Before. What's his name? The guy in the second movie who you knew never had a chance, but he was a much better pick for her over Peter. I can't remember. I'm really bad at names, you guys. I'm sorry. I read so many books, all the names just kind of bunched together. After that, Belly continues to watch Conrad self-destruct, and she does absolutely nothing to try to change her feelings about him. It's honestly kind of sad how much this poor girl is just so enamored with this guy, and he does not deserve her time of day. So that is essentially the entire tone of this book. This book doesn't really have a plot outside of the relationships between these teenagers. It goes from Belly and the boys hanging out in the pool, to Stephen leaving temporarily, to him coming back, to them going to a party on the beach, Connor getting drunk, getting upset, and then starting a fight, Jeremiah talking him down, Belly getting involved, and lamenting the fact that Conrad is such a bad boy and doesn't like her constant roller coaster of feelings towards Cam and Conrad, her going on dates with Cam, her hanging out with the boys, going swimming at the pool, Taylor magically appearing out of nowhere, coming to the house to rile things up. And that's probably the only time that this book was actually interesting, was when Taylor came to the beach house. Now at first, Belly is a little bit upset because she, like Conrad, is very territorial of her friends and her space. She knows what Taylor is like, she knows she's going to flirt with the boys, and she knows that she's just there to put the names to the faces. She's been hearing constantly about Conrad and Jeremiah for years, And now she's finally meeting them for the very first time. And of course, Jeremiah is kind of in love with her. I don't want to say love because when you're a teenager, I know you feel a lot of emotions very strongly. I guess we could just say that he is in limerence with her, or he just really likes her right off the bat. And Belly gets super upset because she knows that Taylor is just stringing Jeremiah along, which is ironic considering the fact that Belly will do that throughout the rest of the series, so I just find that incredibly ironic. That's basically how the entire story goes. It's just these teenagers hanging out and talking and fighting and going about, normal teenage business. So since nothing is really happening in the book to report, I do want to capture the essence or the tone of the story through reading you quotes. This quote in particular, it's on page 48. This quote is Belly really hearkening on the fact that she really does not like her mother. She does not really respect her all that much. She doesn't really find any value in her. Everything that this poor woman does, her name's Laurel, by the way, everything this woman does is just wrong in Belly's eyes. And in this passage, she's talking about her parents' divorce and how stone cold and ice queen-ish her mother was about the whole ordeal. Why does she have to be so calm, so placid, talking about their divorce? At least my father cried. At least he was in pain. My mother said nothing, revealed nothing. Our family broke up and she just went on. It wasn't right. Personally, for me, if a woman is completely checked out of a relationship, that speaks volumes more than the poor victim man who didn't see the divorce coming. The divorce came out of nowhere. And this mother, I can just tell, was putting up with so much crap over the years that Belly is just blind to. Because again, the only thing that she has any eyes for is Conrad. And this poor woman probably suffered so much in silence, and she couldn't really tell her daughter, right? Because that's just inappropriate. So she just divorced the man that she was no longer in love with, and she was emotionally ready for that. And now the man, who did not see that coming, he's going through the 5 stages of grief. That's what's actually happening here. He was the one who was surprised by the divorce, not her. She saw it coming, he didn't. He's playing the victim, and Belly, in my opinion, is falling for it. We don't really get to see a lot of the father throughout the series, which I think really does speak volumes about the kind of character that he is. I'm not calling him a bad person. We do see little snippets of him, and he does seem to be like a genuinely decent person. He's one of those guys where he's a nice guy, but he has no idea what's going on. That kind of guy, Not a lot of worldliness to him, I would say. And to build on this very difficult relationship between Belly and her mother, I'm going to read a passage to you guys in which the mother starts to interrogate Belly about Conrad's behavior. My mother cleared her throat. Is Conrad doing drugs? She asked me. What? Is Conrad doing drugs? I almost choked. No. Why are you asking me anyway? Conrad doesn't talk to me, ask Stephen. I already did. He doesn't know. He wouldn't lie, she said, peering at me. Well, I wouldn't either. My mother sighed. I know. Beck's worried. So when I said that Beck was the mother's name, I meant Susanna, not her mother. He's been acting differently. He quit football. I quit dance, I said, rolling my eyes, and you don't see me running around with a crack pipe. So I understand what's happening here, right? It's a teenager, her mother's interrogating her, asking her about her crush and whether or not he's doing drugs. I get that dynamic is not always going to be very good for a mother and her teenage daughter, but I just find it incredibly interesting the way that Belly is just so quick to almost come to Conrad's defense, just the way that this book and many of Jenny Han's books treats drugs and alcohol. I just think it's kind of funny. Again, this was written in 2009. It's funny how things can feel very antiquated considering that this book was written 16 years ago. She says, will you promise to tell me if you hear something? Mom, chill. He's not doing drugs. When do you turn into such a narc anyway? You're one to talk. And then they get over themselves and they start joking with each other. So it seems like a pretty typical relationship between a mother and her teenage daughter. I still feel bad for Laurel because I feel like Belly is so much harder on her than she should be. And I think it's just because she can't really relate to her and she likes Susanna more. And also tying into the whole teenage angst angle, we also have a lot of internalized misogyny and sexism sprinkled throughout the story. Of course, it's a book that follows teenage boys. Unfortunately, that is just to be expected at this point. So Stephen, like I mentioned before, I also don't like him as a character. He's very questionable in the way that he body shames his own sister for being flat-chested. I'm never going to get over that anytime soon. And here he makes fun of Jeremiah because Jeremiah is being a bit moody in the way that he's just not agreeing with everything that Stephen is saying. You know how those people are. Jeremiah, are you on your period or something? "I was just kidding, man," Steven called to him. Jeremiah didn't turn around, he just kept walking down the shore. And then Conrad actually comes to his defense. "Just leave him alone," Conrad says. Even Conrad's calling out Steven's crappy behavior. You know it's bad when Conrad is the voice of reason in a conversation. So Steven is obviously very gutted by this because he looks up to Conrad for some reason. So Conrad's the only one that can actually talk Steven down. So the topic of Susanna's cancer is brought up again, and they overhear the mothers talking about this, and Jeremiah is understandably upset that Susanna is crying because she is talking about her breast cancer, and she said she'd rather die than give up any of her body parts. And Jeremiah goes back to the beach, and Steven says something uncouth. He doesn't know that they overheard what the mothers were talking about, but still, he's like, "Read the room. Guy, no one thinks you're funny. Just stop." Personally, nothing that teenage boys say is funny to me, the vast majority of the time. Yeah, I would just say, just calm down, my guy. Just, no, that's enough. Yeah, so Steven makes a joke that they had their first kiss or something. Jeremiah is upset, so he walks away. And then Steven asks him if he's on his period, because he is an asshole. And after this little interaction, this is before she meets Cam, Belly is starting to see Jeremiah in a brand new light, and this is foreshadowing the future love triangle that will continue to plague this series. So Belly and Jeremiah are hanging out alone together, and they're starting to get into this intimate moment, and that's when Belly realizes that Jeremiah Fisher wants to kiss me. Which was crazy. This was Jeremiah. He never looked at me like that, and as for me, Conrad was the one I liked, even when he was moody and inaccessible the way he was now. Girlie, you need to go to therapy. This is not healthy. It had always been Conrad. I never seriously considered Jeremiah, not with Conrad standing there. And of course, Jeremiah had never looked at me that way before either. I was his pal, his movie-watching partner, the girl he shared a bathroom with, shared secrets with. I wasn't the girl he kissed. So Belly is just ride or die for Conrad. She refuses to look at anyone else until Cam just walks onto the scene. Poor Cam, I feel so bad for him. And now Jeremiah is suddenly starting to pop up in the back of her mind as a potential future partner, and she doesn't really know how to feel about that. And then on one of their many beachy adventures, they go to Go-Kart City, and one of their older friends is there. I'm guessing this is probably one of the older friends that buys them beer. And so Jeremiah is the one who brings her to Go-Kart City because he wants to give her some driving practice because, again, she's 16, she doesn't quite have her license yet. So they are waiting in line, and when it was our turn, the guy told me to get in the blue one. I said, "Can I drive the red one instead?" He winked at me and said, "You're so pretty, I'd let you drive my car." Gross. And this next passage, to me, really proves the kind of mentality that Belly has surrounding guys and flirting, which I understand. When you're a teenager, you see an older guy flirting with you and you view it as a compliment, when in reality, it's probably not as flattering as you actually think it is. I could feel myself blush, but I liked it. The guy was older than me, and he was actually paying me attention. Weird way of phrasing that, but okay. It was kind of amazing. I'd seen him there the summer before, and he hadn't looked at me once. Gross. He shouldn't be looking at you. And then this also ties in to one of Jeremiah's many flaws, is that he's a bit of a classist jerk. Even though he is my favorite character, at least in the very beginning of the series, he, of course, has his flaws. What a freaking cheeseball. He needs to get a real job. This is Jeremiah talking about the older man who flirted with Belly, a teenage girl, mind you, and he is upset because he feels territorial of Belly. Every guy in the story does. And she counters with, like, lifeguarding is a real job, because Jeremiah is a lifeguard, and she is defending the weird creep who flirted with her at the Go-Kart City. Belly truly is the worst thing to happen in this series, and I just wish that she was written a little bit better. And just to further prove the kind of terrible person that Belly is, one day when she's hanging out with Cam and his friends, she remarks on one of his friends named Kinsey. Kinsey was sprawled out on the couch and he wasn't wearing a shirt. He had a scrawny bird chest. He didn't look like a meth dealer, he looked like a paperboy. What is with Jenny Han and these weird drug references? I don't understand that. And so this next scene is pretty distressing, so before we get into it, I do want to trigger warn you for sexual assault, unfortunately. I'm not sure if everyone would classify it as that, but I am in this moment. We are on page 159, so about halfway through the book. Belly and Cam are getting pretty serious. Even within the span of a summer, right? They're only there for 2 months. They are starting to develop strong feelings for each other, well, at least Cam is for Belly, and he turns turns to her and he kisses her while he's dropping her off in his car. And Belly says, I wish this had been my first kiss. And we'll get to that in a moment, but I just stumbled across this quote from Susanna, and my goodness, everyone in this series is so insufferable. Even the cancer patient. I have moments where I wish that she would just shut her face because she says some of the most ridiculous things. You know when someone is paying a woman a compliment about her appearance, but it kind of feels like a backhanded compliment or kind of weird because you're insinuating that, oh, now you look more attractive for men, so it's a good thing that you have boobs now because now men can find you attractive, like the go-kart guy, right? He didn't pay attention to her back when she was flat-chested, but now that she is a full-chested woman at the ripe old age of 16, now he's paying attention to her. It's just a very gross underlying message here with how Belly is objectified, even by other female characters. Susanna says here, you're so lovely, darling. You really blossomed this summer. People can't help but pay you attention. Blossomed how? I love at how no point anyone ever gives her props for her personality. It's always, Belly, you're so pretty. Belly, you're so gorgeous. Belly, your tits are huge. It's never anything substantial about who she is as a person, and I think that speaks volumes on what she really values in her life. It's very vain, it's very superficial. Even her relationship with Conrad is all based on a fantasy and years and years and years of putting him up on this pedestal. Same thing with womanhood. She always views womanhood as this, oh, I have to look the part in order to be a woman, instead of actually really marinating on the subject and really sitting down and thinking, what does it actually mean to be a woman? The answer, according to Jenny Han and Belly, is having boobs. You gotta look the part to be the part, I guess. So back to the kiss. So Belly gives us a flashback to 2 years ago, back when Taylor and Conrad and Jeremiah all met up for the first time. This was back when they were 14, so not 16 like I said earlier. It was actually when they were 14. My apologies. Taylor is with them, and she of course is causing trouble, as Taylor always does, and she wants them to play Truth or Dare. That involves kissing. You get where this is going. Taylor opens up the conversation and she starts the game, and she turns to Conrad and asks him, truth or dare? I'm not playing, he says. Taylor pouted. Don't be so gay. 3 cheers for homophobia, everyone. Hip hip hooray. Jeremiah, who once again is my favorite little angel boy, he cuts in and says, you shouldn't use the word gay like that. Oh, Jeremiah. They can never make me hate you. So Jeremiah is an ally. I'd love to see it. And I do want to mention that in the books, Jeremiah is not bisexual. He is in the show. They added that in for whatever reason, I guess for extra diversity points. Although I can see where people think of him as bisexual. I'm actually not surprised that they made that change, because I can see at least the character in the show. I can see that character dating men and women. I think it's fine. I don't mind the change as much. I just found it a bit of a shock because I'm one of those people where you have to be as accurate to the book as possible. I know it's my fatal flaw, it's my one big toxic trait, but I do think that if you're going to adapt a book, you should keep it as close to the original material as possible. But the change from Conrad being purely straight to bisexual, I don't think it's that big of a jump or leap. It doesn't come as a surprise to me personally, but I just want to mention that it wasn't in the book. Also, another thing that wasn't in the book that is in the show that I find to be incredibly antiquated and really gross, and once more in the realm of purity culture, Belly isn't a debutante in the book. At least not to the extent that the show really draws upon it. Like, she does mention that Susanna wants her to be a debutante, and she does entertain her for the most part, or at least just try to give her the daughter experience that she never wanted, but it's not a big deal at all. In fact, I don't even think it's mentioned in this book. I think it's in the second book, but there's no debutante ball, there's no dancing, there's no luncheon with the ladies, there's no drama with Jeremiah versus Conrad. It's none of that at all. And I just found that to be incredibly interesting that they added that in, and I don't like it. I find it incredibly concerning when we are rewarding women for being pure and virginal, and having them come out to society at 16 is very gross, right? Because the whole point of that, when you're thinking of in the realm of Bridgerton, right? When women came out to society, this was their signal to the men to date them, right? Like, mate with me, please, is the underlying message of that entire ball. And that's when the men know that they can pounce. Like, okay, this is our prey. We are the predators. Let's go hunting. That's I know, a very pessimistic way to look at dating, but that's what happens, right? These women, they are old enough to be of married age, and they go out to society. They're finally able to go out and have fun. They're no longer imprisoned in their homes, and they are released to the public, the predators to come and hunt them and kidnap them and marry them and take them to their house and turn them into bangmaids and mothers, and that's when it begins, right? So of course that isn't what actually happens here in this series, but traditionally, when you look at the history of like the debutante ball and coming out to society, it's a ritual and it's a tradition, but I think it's a tradition that really needs to be eradicated because it is so gross, it's so archaic, and it's a very strange thing to dress these women up in bridal colors. They literally look like brides. They're dancing around in white dresses with nice long white gloves, and they're being partnered up with men. It is very much like sending the subliminal message of, you're ready to be married. Now go forth, procreate, produce for the man. And I didn't like it. I didn't like that change because these books, there is none of that is in here at all. I don't know why they included that. Maybe just to give Susanna a bit of a like more motherly role in Belly's life, but I thought it was really gross. So back to the truth or dare, sorry about that little rant, but they are playing and they get to the topic of kissing. So they're asking each other, like, how experienced are you? Did you get to first, second, third base? You know, the way that teenagers talk about sex and relationships and whatnot. And then, so ironically, Jeremiah is made to be bisexual in the show. When asked who she would kiss in the truth or dare circle, she answers Belly. And then Belly is upset because I guess she is terrified of lesbians and she's scared that her friend actually does like her. I think she's just joking. But personally, you know, there is some kind of camaraderie amongst women, and truth be told, being with a woman is probably the safest option for women in some cases. And it reminds me of when I was a kindergarten teacher at this little local daycare in my state. We had these little girls and they were adorable, and they said that they would get married to each other because they were friends. And, you know, because kids say, like, cute little things, like, the way that they view the world and the way that they view marriage and relationships, when they see people who are married, they don't distinguish between heteronormative values, right? They just see two people who like each other, who want to spend the rest of their life with each other. That's how they view marriage, which at the end of the day, that's what marriage is, which I just thought was funny because I'm like, you know what? Marry whoever you like. I think that's adorable. You guys do you. That's great. I just thought that was a very cute interaction because obviously these girls, they're young. Who knows who they're going to end up with? But they obviously didn't see each other in the way that adults see married couples. They just saw each other as like, we're friends. We just want to hang out, have our golden girl experience and just have a good time. And they didn't really actually mean it, but they were just like, oh, you know what? I like you. I'd spend the rest of my life with you. It was just a very adorable conversation. And here, I can see where Taylor could just be, you know, just trying to stir up trouble. I'm sure she just wanted to make Belly uncomfortable, and she succeeded. And she also doesn't really know these boys, and she doesn't really like Steven, so the only person that she's really comfortable with in this circle is Belly, and Belly is very embarrassed by this, maybe a little bit homophobic, I'm not sure. And then Conrad challenges her to kiss her, which I think is kind of funny. And then Belly stands up for herself and she says, I'm a person, you can't just kiss me without my permission. Oh, now she understands consent and empathy and everything like that. And then Conrad tells her, I'm not the one who wants to kiss you. Ouch. Hotly, I said, either way, permission not granted to either of you. Taylor just says, I don't actually want to kiss you. I was just answering the question. I picked truth, not dare. That's why we're not kissing right now. We're not kissing right now because I don't want to kiss you, I told her. Now let's stop talking about it. It's your turn to ask. Fine, Jeremiah. Truth or dare? Dare, he said. Okay, kiss somebody in this room right now. So as you can probably guess, Jeremiah picks Belly. He leaned over to me and said, ready? And before I could answer, he kissed me right on the lips. And just like that, Jeremiah becomes the villain. Once again, Jenny Han cannot decide whether or not Jeremiah is an actually decent person. I'm sorry, but saying ready and then just kissing someone, no go. And again, I know these people are teenagers, but you're never too young to learn a lesson. And Jeremiah obviously was not listening to the whole consent talk that Belly just gave right now, and he is acting really gross right now. So he kisses Belly. His mouth was a little bit open, but it wasn't a French kiss or anything. I tried to push him off, but he kept on kissing me for a few more seconds. I pushed him off again, and he leaned back into the couch as casual as can be. I just had my first kiss in front of people, in front of my brother. Well, at least she understands it. Incest taboo, unlike her brother, who keeps commenting on her breasts like a weirdo. I don't like that. But finally, Steven realizes that this is his sister and he should be grossed out by encountering anything sexual that has anything to do with her. He says, gross. This game is gross. I'm out of here. Because he doesn't like watching someone kiss his sister. And so Belly is also upset because she knows that Jeremiah did this more to spite Taylor than anything else. I couldn't believe that Jeremiah had stolen my first kiss like that. I had been waiting, wanting it to be special, and it had happened during a game of truth or dare. How unspecial could you get? And to top it all off, he had only done it to make Taylor jealous, not because he liked me. So I guess Jeremiah and Taylor kind of play this little cat and mouse game. They can't really decide whether or not they want to date each other, and it's just unhealthy all around. And then, of course, Belly lashes out and she gets upset at Taylor because she led to this situation. And I don't know what Taylor's true intentions were. Yeah, she's just being a crappy friend. Because she walks in and then she says, I know you're still awake, Belly, she said, and I forgive you. You're the one that needs to be begging for forgiveness here, babe, not your friend. You created the circumstances so she could get assaulted. You were in the wrong here, not her. And so because Belly is still upset, of course she escalates the situation further, and the next day she's talking to Taylor. She doesn't like how she's stringing Jeremiah along and how she is basically treating him like a little toy that she can play with. And then Belly approaches her and she says, I didn't think you'd ever act so I searched for the perfect word to cut her the way she'd cut me. Slutty. So now Belly is slut-shaming her best friend, supposed best friend, and Taylor gets understandably upset, and she says, I'm not a slut, she said in a tiny voice. Belly says, this was my power over her. The one thing I will say about Jenny Han and the unfortunate circumstances of the early 2000s is the fact that we get a lot of references to the era of 2009 in the worst way possible, and this was probably one of the most triggering references I have read in a very long time. I'm sure many of you will agree and relate to this on some level. My eyes burned from the salty seawater, and my skin felt raw from scraping against the sand so many times, like I'd scrubbed my whole body with my mother's St. Ives apricot scrub. I used to use that when I was younger. Still haven't recovered fully from it. So like I mentioned before, Belly does not treat Cam with the respect and dignity that he deserves. Again, I hate it when a book forces me to sympathize with a man, but here we are. Unfortunately, Cam is too good for the series and he just doesn't know it. So Cam, because he is not Conrad, is punished for existing. Belly is essentially using him as this vessel to vicariously live through him and try to create the fantasy in her head that she had with Conrad. However, Cam is not Conrad, so therefore anytime he acts a certain way, she just finds a way to be angry at him. This man breathes and Belly is upset at his very existence. And that is what frustrates me the most about Belly, is that anyone who isn't Conrad must be punished for their sin of not being Conrad. And you can kind of see her built up resentment of this fact through this conversation. So allow me to paint this picture for you. So Belly sent Cam out to go and get Kool-Aid for her. So in this scene, Belly and Cam are at the cousin's house, right? The beach house that she and her mother and brother always go to. They're hanging out with the boys. Cam is trying to be buddy-buddy with the boys, right? Because they are her friends, and also her brother is there. So he's trying to, be one of the guys. Totally makes sense. But of course, because he's with the worst group of boys that ever existed, he unfortunately kind of develops their personalities a little bit. One of those personality traits is that they just punish Belly for being a girl. And they don't treat her with the chivalry that most women deserve, in my opinion. So she sends him out to get Kool-Aid and he doesn't come back for 45 minutes and she gets upset. So she goes to confront him and she says, thanks for never coming back with my Kool-Aid. Belly is our passive-aggressive queen, and I wish I could love her for that, but she gets angry at the worst times, and it just doesn't work for her character. And then Cam, being the good guy that he is, realizes his blunder and tries to apologize. Whoops, my bad. The guys asked me to play, so they're playing a game. Conrad says, don't apologize. Why shouldn't he apologize, Conrad? He said he was going to do something. right? Let your yes be a yes, let your no be a no. He said he was going to do something for his girlfriend, his new girlfriend, by the way. He didn't do it. He feels bad. He wants to apologize. Why are we not treating people with the decorum that they deserve? Conrad, where is your decorum? Where is your etiquette? Where are your manners? Who raised you? Honestly, this just shows that Conrad has absolutely no concept of basic human decency, and it kills me that Belly is simping for him so hard. This poor girl. My goodness, she has absolutely no idea. Jeremiah steps in, because let's be real here. So Jeremiah, in this book, he still is the better Fisher brother, not by a long shot, but still, he's still one of the better ones, and yet he still has these sexist blunders. So I am a Jeremiah apologist, and we will get to that later on, but even here, I can still recognize his flaws, and it gets to a point where I can't really decide if I like Jeremiah or not. Statements like this make me question whether or not I am a true Jeremiah apologist, and allow me to illustrate that for you. Yeah, what are you, her slave? Now she's got you making her Kool-Aid? Kim asked her if she wanted something, and now you're making fun of him for being a good person? Oh, right, because you're not a good person, so that's why you're punishing him. I got it. Thank you. I'm enlightened now. I see the light, and it is bright and blinding. Honestly, whenever someone is punishing another person, and unfortunately I've seen this a lot, anytime someone is punishing or insulting someone for being a good person, it is because they are not a good person and they are projecting their own insecurities onto the actual good guy or girl that is the unfortunate subject of their verbal abuse. And I hate this for Cam because these boys are so shitty. People like this make me realize that the male loneliness epidemic is probably the best thing to happen to humanity, because how else will these men learn? Honestly, this is basic Darwinism. If you can't adapt and treat people with common decency, maybe you just don't deserve to procreate. That's all I have to say about the matter. But men like this just make me realize that, hey, women have been putting up with too much for too long, and you know what? You deserve to be punished. Belly also does this too. Whenever Cam tries to be a good, healthy partner to her, she punishes him for it. And they have a fight because Belly is the problem, as she always is throughout this entire series, and she is upset that he is trying to communicate with her in a healthy manner. And what does she do? She punishes him for, not being Conrad. And then she knows that she's in the wrong. So she gets up and walks away and then is upset when he doesn't follow her and continue to force his presence onto her, like another character would. I walked away as fast as I could, and sand kicked up behind me. I thought he might follow me, but he didn't. I didn't look back to see what he was doing either. He was probably sitting in the sand writing one of his stupid poems by the light of the moon. How dare a man be sensitive? How dare a man write poems? How dare a man be creative? He should get drunk and just cause fights for no reason. After all, that's what a man does, a real man, right? I hate this for us. I really do. And the next page, Belly and him still haven't talked. They haven't made up yet. And she's just wondering what Cam is doing. She's frustrated about the fact that he hasn't apologized for existing yet. And she thinks to herself, I was waiting for Cam to come back inside. And when he didn't, I only felt madder. He's distancing himself from you. He's giving you space, which you clearly need, by the way. Belly, you need to take several deep breaths. Right now, sit down right now. Do the breathing exercise where you... This is what I teach to my 5-year-old students. Do that, like 5 times. And then once you've calmed down from whatever erratic brain aneurysm you're working through right now, then you talk to your boyfriend. In my personal experience, in my relationship, the best thing I've ever done is to not talk to my husband about something that has made me angry while I'm still angry. The best conversations I've ever had with my husband were the ones in which I told him a day or two later, once I've had enough time to calm down, really think about it, work through what's happening, see things from his side of the argument, and then talk to him about it, that is when we've had the best conversations. That is when we've been able to really rationalize and work through our issues. Handling something in the midst of you having a mental breakdown has done absolutely nothing other than create more problems, and even worse, made you probably say something that you wouldn't have said once you've sobered up, once you've calmed down a little bit and worked through your feelings. Trying to solve a problem while you are having an emotional heart attack, is what I like to call it, is never a good way to solve any issues. And Belly, of course, she's 16, I will give her that. She gets a free pass on quite a few things, honestly. But when you're younger, like Belly, you don't really understand that yelling at people while you're angry, trying to solve a problem, work through something while you're still in the heat of the moment is not the best time to do it. And unfortunately, that is something that you learn the older you get. So Belly says here, because he hasn't come in and continued the fight that she would later have with Conrad, and again, this is something that is a cycle between Belly and Conrad. They get upset, they get angry, they yell at each other, they pursue each other in the heat of the moment, they create an even bigger problem, and then they calm down days later and they're able to work through it like adults. But that fight really harbors more resentment in their hearts. They are unable to look past it, and it creates more problems, and it just is a cycle that continues because then they create kind of like a filing cabinet of things they can pull out at random moments and use them as weapons against their partner. And this is not the habit of a good relationship, is creating more unnecessary fights. Calm down, take a breath, take a breather, distance yourself from the situation, come back when you can handle things like adults. And here, because Cam is trying to handle this in a healthy manner, Belly is upset at him, so she says, "Part of me was tempted to lock the door on him." Now boy, he'd probably meet some random homeless guy and become best friends with him, and then he'd tell me the man's life story the next day. Why is that a bad thing? That your boyfriend is treating homeless people like people? Meeting new friends? Helping a person out? Oh, and even better, not that there are any homeless guys on our end of the beach. No, because we have the good beach. We don't have a dirty, filthy beach with, people who have been forced out of their homes by reasons unknown. Other human beings that haven't showered, aren't treated like people because they're seen as poor and demonized. No, we don't have those animals on our beach. We have the good beach. Don't you just love classism? Doesn't it just make you want to skip and click your heels? Yay. Oh, it fills my heart with so much joy. Love to see it. Any book written about a 16-year-old half-Korean woman. Great. So again, the reason why I am trying to read you guys some quotes from this book is not only just to prove how problematic it is, but also to prove the utter lack of plot that happens in these books. The whole point of a book like this that lacks in the plot department is so it becomes a character study. The problem with this is if you have shitty characters, the book is no longer enjoyable. And again, I get it. This book was not written with people like me in mind. I am a woman in her late 20s. I have mentally graduated from high school. I am not in the mental space anymore to read a book like this and sympathize with these characters. I can look back on my teenager self. I remember what it was like to be so hormonal all the time, but I was thinking back on how I was in high school, and I was thinking, oh God, I don't think I was this mean or cruel towards someone. And that's the problem, is that Jenny Han is writing these characters like they are the ubiquitous teenagers of that time, when in reality, not everyone looked, talked, and acted like this. And I find that rather concerning that she views a lot of these concepts as normal. She is also rewarding many of these boys and Belly with behaviors that are actually rather questionable. And Belly is not the only one who punishes Cam for being a good person. Jeremiah is also rather jealous. Again, everyone in this book likes Belly. Everyone naturally gravitates towards her because she's not like other girls, like Taylor. And he is upset the fact that she's deigned to date a man besides her. Jeremiah, if you wanted to date her, ask her out. My goodness, men will literally do anything besides being productive in a romantic way. So Jeremiah and her are talking about their recent little tryst, and he brings up the subject of Cam. So what about you? Cam Cameron, huh? Cam the vegetarian. Cam the straight edge. Don't you just love it when someone makes fun of someone for being a vegetarian? Or any other kind of dietary need? Like, Cam is a vegetarian because he doesn't like animal cruelty, and I don't like when people punish other people for their dietary preferences, but here we are. I try not to smile. So what? I like him. That's a good defense of your boyfriend there, Belly. Good job. And Jeremiah says he's kind of a dork. Isn't it stupid when people are nice to other people? Ah, so dumb. I hate it. So cringy. Belly says that's what I like about him. He's different. You mean normal. Babe, that's the word that you're looking for? Thank you. He frowned slightly. Different from who? I don't know. But I did know. I knew exactly who he was different from. You mean he's not a dick like Conrad? That's Jeremiah talking. So the fact that even his own brother knows that Conrad is a douchebag speaks volumes. And then Belly says, Jeremiah was a good friend. He's always been good to me, watched out for me, except when he kissed you against your will, but we're just gonna ignore that. And then later on, Belly talks about Mr. Fisher and how he is this perfect man and she looks up to him even though he cheated on Susanna when she was dying of cancer the first time around. But we're just gonna ignore that. Yeah. What are we gonna do? Hold men accountable for their actions? What is this, 2025? It's so dumb. But then she does acknowledge the fact that Mr. Fisher does pit the boys against each other and that he doesn't really spend a lot of time at the house because, again, he's cheating on Susanna. Laurel, once again, is bashing on Conrad because she doesn't like him, because she has a good judge of character, unlike Belly. I guess sometimes that's not a genetic trait, but whatever. Then she says, Conrad's been behaving like a little shit. He left all those beer bottles out on the deck this morning for me to clean up. It's getting out of hand. Why are you cleaning up after this man-child? Why isn't Susanna doing this? Why are you letting this boy, who's 18, drink beer? I shouldn't talk though, because when I was 20, I would pay my roommate to go buy me wine. It was the barefoot wine. So for those of you who think I was classy back when I was 20 years old, nope. I was a basic bitch just like everyone else. So Susanna, who is a Conrad apologist, and I hate her for it, says, I think he knows something's up. He's been like this for months now. He's so sensitive. Gross. I know it's going to hit him harder. So the thing I detest absolutely about Susanna is the fact that she favors Conrad. Everyone in this book favors Conrad, and I hate that. I hate it when the child who acts up is the one who gets the most attention, right? We've all seen it. It's like the Karens of social media, the rage baiters of TikTok. Anyone who does anything negative gets way more reinforcement and engagement from people when they don't really deserve it as often. And then the good people, the good children, the one who always does the right thing, they don't get as much of a spotlight as the people who are negative are. Even on my own channel, videos that I give positive reviews of books for don't get half as much of engagement as these types of videos in which I talk about my negative opinions about books like this one. And again, that is not me criticizing my viewers. I will never do that. However, I'm just pointing out the fact that negative engagement is sometimes even better than positive engagement. And I hate it when people like Conrad get more positive attention from people in their lives, even favoritism over potentially better people like Cam. Conrad gets fawned over way more than is necessary, and it kills me that men and boys like Conrad get way more positive reinforcement than men or boys like Cam. The nice guys finish last mantra? Yeah, nice guys do finish last because they let the girls finish first. Just saying. They're not the ones who are complaining about the male loneliness epidemic. I can tell you that much. Why is that? Because they're good partners. That's why. Just wanted to clear up the mystery there. But yeah, so this part's hilarious. Another thing I will say about Susanna is, I'm looking for the quote here, but I hate it when women do this. I love women, first of all. I'm team girl all the way. But I absolutely hate it when women play for team man in a way that harms other women. You can play for Team Man when you see a man in trouble and you want to help him. That's fine. However, Susanna, who is currently dying of cancer the second time, knows that she's not going to survive this round, so she forces the role of mothership onto Belly. She tells Belly several times throughout this book to take care of Conrad. No. Why is it always a woman's job? Take care of grown men. They're grown. They can vote, they can drink, they can drive, not at the same time. Why can't they figure their shit out on their own? Why is it up to the woman to play girlfriend, bangmaid, and mother? Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. No, absolutely not. That should have been Belly's response. Why are you forcing a 16-year-old girl to take care of an 18-year-old man-child? No, maybe you should have raised him better. How does that sound? Maybe you should have raised Conrad to be self-sufficient, to be emotionally mature, to be independent enough to where he can take care of himself and no one else needs to police him like Jeremiah. I hate that, honestly. Everyone in this series is literally on Conrad duty 24/7 and I'm sick and tired of it. No, if I was in Conrad's orbit like these people, I would not enable him. These people are enablers. They are positively reinforcing Conrad's behavior by allowing him to continue to behave this way and try to fix him. Instead of creating an ultimatum, instead of having an intervention, instead of calling him out on this bullshit, holding him accountable, and forcing him to become a better person. Why would we do that? No, that's so dumb. We shouldn't force men to grow and change. In this day and age, are you joking? Absolutely not, babe. I'm over it, honestly. I'm sick and tired of it. And also the reason why I'm saying that Conrad does not deserve any flowers at all is because he, being a grown man who has known this woman for years, forgot her birthday. In chapter 36, Belly is celebrating her birthday, but it's kind of a bittersweet moment because she knows that her birthday signifies the end of summer, which means the end of her time at Cousins and her time around Conrad. So she makes a wish and she blows out the candles and she is wishing for who? You guessed it, Conrad, of course. So Susanna gives her a family heirloom for her birthday and passes it down to Belly, right? Her surrogate daughter, so to speak. My father gave me these for my 16th birthday. I want you to have them. So it was a very sweet moment between Susanna, Belly's second mother, and Belly, and she loves them so much. She fastens them around her neck, so now she can really clutch at her pearls, both figuratively and literally. And then Conrad is there, and Susanna turns to him and she's like, okay boys, now you give her your presents. I'm sure they're just as well thought out and lovely as mine, right? And then Conrad says, I forgot, sorry. Wow, what a man. I'm surprised no one has thrown a parade in his honor yet. Real shocker. Belly says he'd never forgotten my birthday before, and then she says, that's okay, out loud to Conrad. The man who has known her for years magically forgot her birthday one year. It's not okay. Why are you telling him it's okay? Stop. Then Jeremiah, being the golden retriever that he is, cuts in and says, open mine next, because of course Jeremiah remembered her birthday. Because the bar is in hell, he's back in my good graces now. That is how bad Conrad is, that he can make Jeremiah, this sexual assaulter, look good. Although, this is Jeremiah speaking, although after that, mine kind of sucks in comparison. Compared to Conrad's lack of gifts, Jeremiah, don't worry babe, you're doing just fine. He says, thanks a lot mom. So he just ignores Conrad, which honestly is probably the best kind of reinforcement at this time, is negative reinforcement. You just ignore them and pretend like they don't exist. And then Belly shakes a box and she says, okay, what could it be? Plastic poop? A license plate keychain? She really has no faith in Jeremiah, does she? And then he says, Yoli helped me pick it out. And that is the person that he's dating at the time. And then she opens a box and inside, nestled on a bed of cotton, was a small charm, a tiny silver key. So the significance behind this present is actually from a birthday that happened years ago that Jeremiah remembered, right? Because he actually cares about Belly. This charm bracelet was gifted to her 3 years ago by Susanna. You know the kind of charm bracelet where you're gifted the chain and then over time you add more charms to it? Well, Jeremiah knows that she still has this bracelet, so he gave her another charm to put on the bracelet. So he's giving her jewelry that has significant value because it's something from a person that she loves dearly. That is a good gift, okay? Gentlemen, take notes. It's not that freaking hard to please women, alright? It's not that hard, I'm telling you. You act like we're these Rubik Cubes kind of people that you just can't quite solve. We're not. We're literally so easy to understand. All you have to do is listen, okay? It's not that difficult. My goodness. We're more like those tiny little crossword puzzles that they give you in kindergarten class just to prove that you can read and write. Just saying. Not saying that women are dumb, I'm just saying that we're just not that difficult to understand. We're not elusive creatures of the night, we are people, and it's really not that difficult to figure us out. Just saying. You just have to pay attention. Once again, Belly is just angry at her mother for not being Susanna, love to see it. And then chapter 39, she is punishing a girl for dating Conrad. And once again, her anger is displaced. She is angry at Conrad for not noticing her, for not dating her, and she is putting the blame on the girl. I hate this so much. I hate female competition. I hate the fact that we're fighting this fight over a man who we're treating him like a trophy, and he's nothing more than a participation certificate you get at the end of Little League when you're 6 years old, and after a season in which you barely hit the ball off the tee, you didn't even see the bases, and you still get rewarded something at the end of it because at least you gave it a good old honest try. That is what Conrad is. He is a participation certificate for a Little League baseball game that you got because the coach felt bad for you because you sucked at baseball, but you still have to get something, otherwise your parents will complain. That is what Conrad is in my mind, and you cannot convince me otherwise. And the fact that she is angry at the fact that Conrad is unwilling to date her but still flirt with her on the side and taking it out on this poor girl. And even worse, she doesn't even really acknowledge her by her name. She calls her Nicole the Red Sox girl because apparently she likes the Red Sox and she saw her wearing a Red Sox t-shirt at the bonfire and she's never been able to forget it ever since. What a joy to read. And then she says it was bizarre to have a girl there other than me, as if Belly has won the right to be the only girl at the boys only club. Adorable. And she continues to fluctuate between calling her Nicole / the Red Sox girl, which is incredibly disrespectful and I hate it. And they are trying to figure out who is going to pick out the movie that they are going to be watching. And then Belly continues on her slut-shaming train because she's mad when they go up to Conrad's room alone. And then Belly continues to slut-shame people by saying they're so disgusting they probably went upstairs to go at it. And she's talking about Conrad and the Red Sox girl when they leave the movie-watching party to go upstairs to have some private time. I don't like it. I think it's incredibly hypocritical of authors like Jenny Han who are pro-purity culture in a negative way. Take what I say with a grain of salt because I grew up inundated in purity culture, but I don't like it, even with regards to what I said earlier about the fact that I think that people should have sex when they're older. Conrad and this girl, at least in my mind, are both consenting adults. They can do whatever they want. No biggie. No one can tell them what they can do. They have their choices and they have to be held accountable for them. Slut-shaming someone for wanting to have sex whenever they so choose is never a good thing. Even me and my personal beliefs that people should wait until they're a little bit older to be intimate with someone, I still don't slut shame people because I understand it, right? Teenagers have hormones. They get excited. They just are curious. They want to explore. There's nothing wrong with that. However, judging someone because they want to be intimate with their partner, another consenting individual, is wrong. We should never judge someone based on their own personal journey. People have substantive reasons for why they do what they do, and we should not judge people by our own personal worldview and experiences. We can always give advice for things that have worked for us, but when someone makes a decision, they have a good reason for it. They have personal experiences to back it up, and it may be misguided sometimes, but at least they made a decision and they have to deal with the consequences of it. And Belly judging someone for sleeping with her crush is just awful. It's not feminist in the slightest. So a fun fact about this video in particular, you may have noticed a slight change in the lighting. It's because when I first started filming, there was a huge storm outside, the kind of storm that literally turns the sky black. I'm sure we've all seen those kind of storms, especially living in the Midwest, and the power went out. so I could not film the rest of the video. And you know, once you lose momentum on a creative project, you kind of lose the will to continue that project, and I don't like it when the lighting changes erratically throughout my videos, so I decided to take a break after the power turned back on. I watched the show The Summer I Turned Pretty, and oh my goodness, it was like night and day. It was such a stark difference. It was such a breath of fresh air. Belly is way more palatable in the show. She's way more enjoyable. I found her to be really adorable and nice and friendly. Her relationship between everyone in the series is 10 times better, especially with her relationship with Conrad. She sees that he's a walking red flag, at least in the beginning, and then she has a wonderful meet cute with Cam at the bonfire party, and she's having a good time, and then she says, this is finally the summer that I've been dreaming of, a summer in which she falls in love. And the show doesn't emphasize that that's something that she wants specifically with Conrad, but just in general, and I love that change so much because she's not so hyper-focused on Conrad, at least in the beginning, and she just wants to be treated like a person and fall in love and have a great experience. That's what I like more about the show. Still don't like the debutante stuff, but I guess that's just a cross we need to bear for now. But again, it's so much better in the show, especially with the fact that they don't have all the homophobia, all the sexism as much. It's just more treated as everyone is much more of a neutral party, and it's much more refreshing take on the story than what Jenny Han has decided to do. Also, I find it incredibly hypocritical that she not only promotes but actually encourages underage drinking, but then she demonizes teenage intimacy in relationships. I'm sorry, what do you think motivates a lot of teenagers to move forward with their relationships and be more intimate in ways that they would be more comfortable with? Oh right, alcohol. Sorry, I forgot. So dumb. She's also very anti-drug, but alcohol's fine. Yeah, no, alcohol's great. It doesn't cause any kind of health problems down the line. Yeah, excessive drinking doesn't do anything like cause excessive holes in your brain, DUIs, hallucinations, depending on how much you consume. No, that stuff is dumb. That's made up. It's a myth. It's not true at all. And I love it when authors stand on their soapbox and push this interesting narrative out that drugs are bad. You know, reefer fever. Stay away from the stuff, you guys. Devil's lettuce. But then they are totally fine with their characters drinking excessively at a young age, as if that doesn't cause problems health-wise later on down the line. I also don't like that in the show, Belly is very anti-weed, when in reality, marijuana does have medicinal value. I actually had a friend who suffers from epilepsy who actually takes, I don't know which strain it is, so I won't try to guess and say it wrong in case someone is actually also suffering from epilepsy. But so fun fact, a friend of mine who suffered from epilepsy, she went through several trial runs of several different medications, old and new, to try to find, the perfect combination. And nothing worked out for her until she took medicinal weed, and then she was all right. You know what I mean? And that's a Matthew McConaughey joke. But she finally found something that worked out for her, at least from what I could tell, and it actually worked wonders for her. I'm pretty sure they were tests that were done on dogs that suffered from seizures, and once they, gave them some of the medicinal marijuana, it actually worked out. So that's the thing that I hate about people who are anti-drug, because they miss out on the fact that not all drugs are bad. Even worse, the fact that some of them can actually be healthy on the medicinal side. Even things like magic mushrooms, ironically, can also be very beneficial for people who suffer from a lot of mental health issues. I've heard that LSD, when you take out the addictive strain, can actually help with psychosis and hallucinations, which is bonkers. I am so happy that we live in a day and age in which we have capable doctors who can solve insane problems like psychosis with something as simple as a mushroom that grows in the forest that people can just access at your own risk. But that's crazy. And I hate this whole anti-drug mantra. When you sit back and really look at it and you stop demonizing and stigmatizing certain things, they can actually be healthy. It opens you up to a whole new world in which you can discover things that can actually help people out. And I hate that Jenny Han has this weird message about purity and anti-drugs, and then turns around and then promotes and encourages underage drinking in minors. Pick a lane, lady. What are you doing? I don't get it. I don't understand her motivations behind that. So this entire book is just Belly being head over heels for Conrad in the worst way. And she is also fighting with her feelings for Jeremiah, who actually opens up to her and tells her that he likes her. I didn't see him that way. And this is Belly talking about Jeremiah. I didn't see him that way. There was only one person. For me, that person was Conrad. Why? No, honestly, why? Say 5 good things about him. 5. That shouldn't be that difficult. I have more than 5 good things about my husband. Honestly, I have a list of good things about my husband. It doesn't take me that long to figure it out. I can't even say 5 good things about Conrad, and I've read 3 books about him. Just saying. Jeremiah, I feel so bad for him because it's obvious throughout this entire series that he is not the favorite. Conrad is unfairly favoritized throughout this entire series, and I can't understand why we are enabling this toxic man-child and dismissing this other man-child who is moldable. You know, he's malleable, he is adaptable, he can change and move on. Jeremiah is one of those boys where you see the potential and there's not much to fix. Again, not saying that women should be charged with the task of changing men, but Jeremiah has a lot of flaws, as many teenage boys do. However, he has way more positive potential for change. He is a good person. He can talk Conrad down off the ledge. He is thoughtful and kind to Belly. He is a good gift giver. He has a lot more goodness in him. He has a lot more things about him that make him a good potential partner for Belly than Conrad does. And yet Belly automatically dismisses him because in that relationship, she will not be seen as the better partner. I have seen relationships like this where people have broken up with phenomenal people. I'm talking the best kind of people in the world because they're not the spotlight partner. They're the ones in the shadows. Their partner outshines them and they cannot handle it because they are insecure. So they have to find a partner that is below them so they can look like the, oh my God, the angel of the group. Oh my God, look at her. She is so kind to be dating this charity case of a man. Wow, look at him. Oh my gosh, he could have gotten any girl and he chose her. What a lovely individual. How nice of him to take time out of his life to really put in the community service to help this person out. You know those kind of people. Yeah. They have to be the good one at all times, and Belly knows that if she was in a relationship with Jeremiah, he would be the fan favorite and not her. Just saying. So Jeremiah recognizes the fact that she likes Conrad, right? He has eyes and a working brain. He can do the math. And he says, I'm not mad at you. I'm just, why does it always have to be Conrad? That's a good question, Jeremiah. I also don't know the answer to that. And then Jeremiah also says that the father likes Conrad more. Why? Why does anyone like Conrad? Explain this to me, please. We are never shown the good side of Conrad ever. It's just always the bad. Jeremiah laments about the fact that his dad likes Conrad more than him. His mother likes Conrad more than him. It is just atrocious how little this poor boy is given any attention at all. My goodness. Jeremiah is not the best character either, but you know, I just feel so bad for him. Maybe that's why I like him. It's like, look at this poor little bean. No one loves him. Poor little bean. It's sad. I don't know. Maybe that's my toxic trait. I root for the underdog. You know, the one that doesn't get all the love but deserves all the love. That's my thing. Maybe I'm just contrarian. Maybe that's my toxic trait. I always choose the one that nobody actually likes and they question me for it. And I'm like, well, they deserve a little bit of love too, don't you think? I don't know. I just feel bad for this poor sucker. So we're reaching the end of this story, and Belly is trying her hardest to still try to get into Conrad's good graces and become the woman that she knows he secretly loves. And she tries to convince him. Conrad is obviously in love with Belly. He's obviously stringing her along, and he's trying to gaslight her into thinking that he isn't playing games with her, which he obviously is. And then Belly tries to call him out on this. Now imagine this. Imagine she was actually wrong and Conrad didn't actually like her. And then keep that in your mind as we're reading this. They are, once again, hanging out together, because where else is she gonna go? And she says to him, this is when she starts to confess her feelings for him, which is kind of pathetic, babe. I'm not gonna lie. If you have to beg a man to like you, pathetic. I don't like it. You're the mayor pathetic Belle right now. Just saying. So Belly tells him, Conrad, compared to you, everyone else is saltines. Like vanilla. That's the metaphor she's trying to make here. It's a bad metaphor, but even Cam, her boyfriend, the person she is currently dating, and refuses to break up with him because she wants her cake and to eat it too. And she says, I hate saltines. And why are you dating him, babe? Let him go. Let him go find someone who actually deserves him. But you can't because you're lonely and you're sad and you want to string this poor boy along because you cannot stand the fact that Conrad is dating someone else, so you're trying to make him jealous. And then she continues to say, you know that she hates her boyfriend, I guess. You know everything about me, even this, which is that I really love you. Keep it in your pants, Belly. Keep it in your pants. And Conrad says this. Oh God, this is so painful and I love it. I love this. He tells her, this girl that he also loves, after she confesses her love for him, well, you shouldn't. I'm not the one. Sorry. You know that game Mortal Kombat? When you win the fight and then you kill someone and it's like fatality. This is what this is like. This is a Mortal Kombat fatality. Oh my gosh, this is so bad. And Belly rejects this because of course she lives in Deluluville and she says, I don't believe you. You like me too. I know it. Which, again, she's actually right. He does actually like her, but because he hates himself, refuses to be happy, refuses to treat her with any kind of dignity and respect at all, so he rejects this. He says, not the way you want me to. You're still such a kid, Belly. You guys are 2 years apart. Oh, because she's a woman and single. She's a child, right? Sorry, I forgot. We live in a patriarchy, not a matriarchy. I gotta get with the times. I'm sorry. I forget how these logistics work. She's not a real person. She's not an adult. She's a lady. She's just a child. She doesn't know what she wants. We shouldn't take her seriously. Sorry, I forgot. Thank you for reminding me, Conrad. Me and my lady brain. I just forget things sometimes. I'm so forgetful. And then Belly finally enforces an ultimatum, which is always a sign of a healthy relationship. And she tells him, you just want to keep me on this hook, right? So I'll keep chasing after you and you can feel good about yourself. As soon as I start to get over you, you just reel me back in. And the unfortunate thing is, she's right. And this is the only time that I'll agree with her. And she says, you're so screwed up in the head, which he is. He needs therapy.
That boy needs therapy.
She does too, but let's just focus on Conrad for now. She says, but I'm telling you, Conrad, this is it. He says, what are you talking about? And she says, this is it. You don't get to have me anymore. Not as your friend or your admirer or anything. I'm through. And he gets upset and then he lashes out at her, obviously. And he's like, 1 minute you like me, then Cam, and then Jeremiah. Isn't that right? You want to have your cake and eat it too, but you also want your cookies and your ice cream. Again, elaborating on a metaphor when we already understand what it means, but you get the idea that Belly, ironically, even though she slut shames her best friend Taylor, she has been stringing all these men along and indecisive about who she actually wants to be with. Unlike Taylor, who is very decisive, right? She's very pointed. She understands that all these relationships are kind of bullshit, but Taylor is just there to, have fun, and Belly faults her for this, and then she turns around and she strings all these guys along emotionally, and personally, I think that's even worse, is when you're indecisive and then you hurt other people because you can't decide who you want to be with. At least Taylor and these boyfriends of hers, they understand what they're doing, they understand where they are in their relationship, they've drawn boundaries, they've defined it, they understand what's going on. Belly does not. And in my case, it makes her an even worse person for this. And then he claims that she's the one playing games, again deflecting onto her his true problems, because he's the one playing games, he refuses to admit it, so he blames her for his own actions. And then she says, you've been an ass all summer, all you think about is yourself. So your parents are getting divorced. So what? So she thinks the reason why Conrad is upset is because his parents are getting divorced. And this is what I hate about this book, is the fact that Jenny Han is excusing and even justifying his horrible behavior is because he's going through trauma. Because he's not actually upset about the fact that his parents are getting divorced. He's upset that his mother is dying of cancer. He knows her diagnosis because Susanna has been very bad about keeping it a secret. Obviously, we've seen Jeremiah and Belly overhearing their conversation between her and Laurel, so we know that she's not very good at keeping secrets, so Conrad knows, and then Jenny Han goes on to excuse his behavior by saying, oh, he's just upset that his mother is dying. That's not an excuse. You don't get a free pass on morality because someone close to you is dying. That's not how that works. So she thinks that he's acting this way, moping around, being a sourpuss because his parents are getting divorced. And then Jeremiah, who overhears this very loud conversation, inserts himself into the conversation. And then he says, you need to start dealing with this man. You're acting like a jerk. Quit taking your anger out on everybody else. Leave Belly alone. Good job, Jeremiah. He stands on business. He's willing to call Conrad out on his negative behavior, and everyone else is enabling him. This is why he's not the favorite child. Conrad is the favorite child, and Jeremiah is unfortunately the background child. He's not even the scapegoat, honestly. I can't even come up with a better, binary between the two of them, but he's definitely the forgotten child. And Jeremiah builds on this, and he says, we've been leaving you alone. We've left you alone this whole summer, getting drunk and sulking like a little kid. You're supposed to be the older one, right? The big brother. Act like it. Yes, thank you. Finally, someone calling Conrad out. This is such a refreshing breath of fresh air. I love this. This is so much fun. I love watching men get their comeuppance. And then he says, freaking man up and handle your business. And then Conrad, of course, growls, get out of my face, because he's a freaking animal, and they start to fight. And then finally, the mothers intercept this, remember that they're the adults in the situation, and then they stop the fight. And then Susanna turns to Conrad and she says, you know, don't you? And this is when we get the reveal that Susanna is dying, and Jeremiah is upset, and he sucked in his breath, and I knew he was holding it in, trying not to cry. His face was already starting to bruise. Conrad, though, his face was indifferent, detached, like he wasn't there. So Conrad is disassociating from this because, God forbid, this man can feel any other emotion other than anger. And then Susanna is trying to calm him down, and poor Jeremiah, he's just crying, and Susanna holds out her arms. Jeremiah fell right in, and even though he was so much bigger than she was, he looked small. And then her mother ushers her out and lets them have this moment, and that's when Laurel reveals to Belly that Susanna is sick again. She's sick. She has been for a long time. The cancer came back, and it's aggressive. It spread to her liver. So now Belly is in the first stage of grief, which is denial, because she can't fathom a world in which Susanna isn't in it. And then the next day, because they're both teenagers and in pain, Belly confronts Conrad, and then he continues to be a jackass to her, because God forbid this man shows any kind of vulnerability. And then Belly tells him, you're the most selfish person I ever met. I can't believe I ever thought I loved you. And then she says, his face turned white. He opened and then closed his mouth, and then he did it again. I've never seen him at a loss for words before. Don't you just love it when the minute you hold a man accountable for his shitty behavior, he acts surprised that someone is actually doing this? My goodness. See, this is what happens when you don't let people get away with their toxic behaviors. They learn a lesson. Shocking, I know. So this is the part that I was looking for. So Susanna, in her dying moments, tells Belly that she should give Conrad another chance. And this is why I hate this woman. I know she's dying of cancer, but still, you don't just tell a 16-year-old girl to give your toxic son another chance. Okay? She is visiting Susanna, who is in the kitchen pretending like she doesn't have cancer. So Belly goes and approaches Susanna, and this is one of the final conversations that she has with her, so it's very emotional. And then Susanna tells her, you'll look after him, won't you? Who? I could feel her cheeks form into a smile. You know who. Why does a 16-year-old girl have to look after anyone? She's a child. Other people should be looking after her, not the other way around. Why are you forcing this onto her? I hate this woman. I hate her so much. I hate any woman who forces other women to placate and baby men. It's awful, and it needs to stop. It's been too long. We need to end it. And then Belly whispers, yes. She promises Susanna that she's going to look after Conrad. Because fuck Jeremiah, am I right? He'll be fine. He doesn't need anyone to look after him. No, the golden child needs help. You need to make sure that Conrad changes his diapers and eats his vegetables and takes his Flintstone vitamins. God. And then Susanna says, good. He needs you. Why? Why does he need her? God, this woman is the worst. If it wasn't for Susanna, who knows, they probably wouldn't have ended up together. So, summer is over, Belly returns home, and then one day she gets a call from, you guessed it, Conrad. This is the last chapter of the book, by the way. When he called, I didn't recognize his voice, partly because I wasn't expecting it, and partly because I was still half asleep. He said, I'm in my car on my way to your house. Can I see you? It was 12:30 in the morning. Boston was 5.5 hours away. He had driven all night. He wanted to see me. Very inconsiderate that he's waking her up in the middle of the night, but we're just gonna ignore that. So then, of course, because Belly is still in love with him, she goes down to see him, and she sneaks out of the house, and then they decide to go on a little drive. Conrad starts the engine. I say, I can't believe you're really here. He sounds almost shy when he says, me neither. And then he hesitates. Are you still coming with me? I can't believe he even has to ask. I would go anywhere. Yes, I tell him. Feels like nothing else exists outside of that word, this moment. There's just us. Everything that happened this summer and every summer before it has led up to this, to now. And that is where the first book ends. Now, I do want to inform you guys. I've read this book a few years ago, so some things may be kind of blurry. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that I know this is sacrilegious to some people, but I bookmarked all of the pages with like insane quotes in them, and then I annotated, oh, you can't see that, and then I annotated quite a bit, quite a substantial amount, but by the time I got to the second book, I just realized I picked up the wrong book. So this is the second book. And first of all, still love the covers. So this book, you'll notice a lot more annotations. The third book had a ton. The first book did not as much. And that is mostly because nothing really happened in the first book. And it's kind of stuck in this weird, vague limbo in my memory box in my mind because nothing really happened like I mentioned before. The only thing that the book really focuses on is their summer at the beach house in Cousins in Virginia, and the fact that Belly plays games with all these boys, including poor little Cam, who she eventually breaks up with via ghosting. She doesn't even have the maturity to break up with him to his face over text, call, nothing. That poor boy. But he got the picture. He knew he wasn't the one, and he just exited out of her life. And now we move on to the second book in the series called It's Not Summer Without You. Alright everyone, now that we've talked about the summary of The Summer I Turned Pretty, let's get into the things I actually enjoyed about this book. And yes, I understand that this book was written for an audience that is much younger than me. I would say girls and boys half my age. So I understand that maybe me not liking this series has a lot to do with the fact that I am in an older demographic. I've had a lot of time to mature and grow. I'm not the same age as these characters, and it does make it a little bit difficult to sympathize with them. However, there were some highlights to this book that I really did enjoy, and one of them is the tragedy of the cancer story and Susanna. So in a book that mostly was what I like to call a character study, so a book that is more focused on the characters and their personal growth rather than the plot. And this was when something was actually happening in the story, because up until this point, all we did really focus on was just Belly pining for Conrad. That does get a little draining after a while. After 200 pages of listening to someone just fawn over one person that you do not, as a reader, like, it can get rather tiring. And I think I also had a little bit of secondhand embarrassment for Belly, because when I was younger, I had a huge crush on this one person at school, and I could definitely relate in a way where you are just pining in silence and the other person doesn't really know. Nothing came of it, of course. I married my husband now, so that was a long time ago. As kids, we always have crushes, and when you're young, you don't really know what to do with these feelings or where to put them or how to react. So you may act out in certain ways that aren't necessarily normal behavior for you, or maybe you are just so frightened and shy that you just much rather sink into the ground than let your crush even look in your direction. So that can get rather difficult. And so I could definitely relate to Belly and the way that she's incapable capable of expressing her emotions in a healthy, mature, or even productive way to allow Conrad to see, oh, this person likes me, and putting the ball in his court and seeing, can I reciprocate those feelings? So I definitely related to Belly on that front, but when you grow out of a certain mindset, it can be rather difficult to look back and really relate to that person. I feel like I have a bit of survivorship bias when it comes to crushes and dating. So what Belly's currently going through, I'm not going through right now, but I can think back when I was younger and think, oh yeah, I definitely understand where she's coming from. However, 200 pages of the same thing, of her thinking of this person over and over and over again without anything really happening, her being mean to Taylor because she's boy crazy and she's a very male-centric character and she's trying to get the boy's attention. I just didn't like how Belly treated her and her mother, and her brother was very strange as well. So it was a bit of breath of fresh air to, instead of focusing on these characters that I just couldn't relate to, focusing on Susanna and her cancer diagnosis. That was a huge bomb that was dropped at the very end of the book, and that was a bit of a cliffhanger, and we're going to talk about that more when we go into the second book. And of course, when I read the fact that Susanna was potentially going to die, I got really disappointed because she was the only character in this story that I actually liked. So that was a bit of a disappointment, knowing that the only character I could actually relate to on a certain level or even enjoy reading on the page was basically getting axed in the second book. We wouldn't be interacting with her as much except through flashbacks. I just found that to be incredibly disappointing, and I don't like it when the only likable characters on the page are taken out, because it's very clear that the author wants us to focus more on the unlikable characters and thinking to themselves, well, if I take those people away, then the other people won't look so bad. No, these characters are still insufferable. It doesn't change anything. I also did like the symbolism of the character diagnosis and how it kind of shows this bit of a life cycle, that one life is ending and another life is beginning, because this is transitioning into a life in which Susanna no longer exists, and Belly and the Fisher boys and her mother and Stephen are going to have to try to find a way to navigate through their grief and pain, and Mr. Fisher, we'll see a lot more of him in the second book. Just watching these people really navigate that level of grief and trying to see how can we move forward, not move past it necessarily, but move on so that way we can live our own lives, because Susanna wouldn't want them to wallow in their grief forever. Obviously, you're still going to be sad about her passing and her death. You're never going to get over that. But at the same time, you can't just pause your life and be sad forever. There's a point where we just have to continue living because that's what our loved ones would want from us. So I thought that was a pretty interesting bit of a symbolic cycle there that Jenny Han included, and I really do appreciate any kind of symbolism in a book. That is my bread and butter. I love it. It's my cup of tea. I enjoy it every single time. I just wish we saw a little bit more of that in this book because, like, for example, We Were Liars has a lot of symbolism, figurative language there. I liked the prosaic diction too. So I definitely liked that book a little bit more than this one, probably because there was more happening and the characters weren't as insufferable. They definitely were a lot more sympathetic to me. And even though Jeremiah is not always the best character, he doesn't always put his best foot forward, he doesn't always say the best thing because he's an immature teenage boy, I still find him to be one of the better characters besides Susanna. I like him because of his free spirit. I like the fact that he always tries to put his best foot forward. He holds himself and other people accountable. He's quick to apologize, admit when he's wrong, and he cares about a lot of people. He doesn't play games like Conrad where he pretends not to like Belly and then decides, okay, well now I like her, so I'm going to drive to her house from college and turn my light on, his figurative light, and be like, okay, now I'm ready for dating when it's convenient for him. I never like relationships like that because it proves that there is a power imbalance between the two of them, that one of them is in the driver's seat while someone else is in the passenger seat, and they're not giving them any autonomy in the relationship. That's just how I interpreted it. Let me know what you guys think, but I just don't like it when girls are basically being strung along by these boys, and it kind of feels like he's trying to exhaust all of his other options, you know, with the Red Sox girl before he gets to Belly, right? Your soulmate or the person that you love should never be your last option. That's just what it felt like to me. That's how I feel like Conrad was treating Belly. He was taking advantage of her a bit, not in like a sexual way, but in a more emotional way where he knew that she was in love with him and he basically used that against her. And I just don't like that. It was very clear that he knew how Belly felt about him and he chose to weaponize that, take advantage of it. And I didn't like how the minute that he finally woke up and decided to treat her with respect, he surprised her instead of actually sitting down and communicating and talking to her like a healthy partner. And again, I know that they're teenagers. I know that they haven't had a lot of experience with dating, but it gets to a point where it's like, you really haven't learned anything about human interactions, have you? It's stuff that they learn over time, so I'll give them some grace for now. Now we move on to the things that I didn't like about this book. And again, I rated this book, the first one, a 2 out of 5 stars because it was very forgettable. I literally had to go back in the book to remind myself what I read. In my defense, I did read this book like 3 years ago. Obviously, some things were not going to be as crystal clear as a book I just read a week ago. But I will say that one of the reasons why I didn't remember anything happening is because nothing really happened. They get to the beach. She hangs out with the boys. They go to parties. Taylor shows up. She has a flashback. She pines over Conrad. She goes out with Cam. He goes out with Red Sox girl. They ignore their partners and they flirt with each other. They hang out at the pool. They say hi to the dads when they come for 4th of July. They go to another party, rinse and repeat, and then the only time that anything happened was at the very end with Susanna's cancer reveal. And that was it. 200 pages of just pure, unadulterated fluff following teenagers and their angst and their weird love triangle, square, pentagon things that they have going on. And again, the older I get, the more I realize that I'm just kind of over the teenage angst thing because it's just painful in certain ways, and it's also insufferable when you have characters who have obvious character flaws, which again, it's normal. Everyone has character flaws. We're humans. We're flawed people. However, the one thing that I really did not like about this book in particular, and the series as a whole, is that Belly never really learns her lesson. She never grows. She never changes. She has people in her life who are trying to help push her down the path to become the better version of herself, and she absolutely refuses to do anything because it's everyone else's fault. The only thing that she changes routinely throughout the series is which Fisher boy she's dating at the time. That's not character growth. When you're going back and making the same mistake over and over and over again, not learning anything, she is a stagnant character. And that's the one thing that I really don't like about Belly. Again, she's a teenage girl. She's going to do cringy, offhand, unhealthy things. She's going to make bad decisions. That's not what I'm critiquing her for. We can give these characters grace because they're young, they're inexperienced, but the problem is that she never learns anything from her mistakes. And it's really frustrating to see a character who constantly gets in their own way and they never do anything to change that. What's the point of reading about characters who don't change? To me, that feels like a waste of time. Like, why am I committing to this story? Why am I committing to these books if nothing really changes? If characters do not grow? If plot lines do not develop? If conflicts are not resolved? It doesn't really make any sense. It just feels like an unfinished story. And these books would be so much better if Belly, in my opinion, didn't end up with either of the Fisher boys. That's my controversial take. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'm team nobody. At the end of the day, it's just too awkward. You dated 2 brothers. It's so strange. I do not like it. Pretty much everything else I did not like about this story. Conrad sucks. If he just never graced us with his presence again, I would be the happiest person in the world. He is awful. He negs women. I don't think he likes women in particular. He's mad at everyone. He has a problem with everything. He never smiles. He never emotes other than just this smug moodiness that comes with the moody, broody bad boy. That is an obligatory third wheel in this love triangle. I hate it. I want it to go away. This is a trend I do not like because, first of all, people that I know that date people like this, they're constantly miserable. Because it's always the rainstorm and the thunderclouds and the bad moods and the mood swings. It never relents. It never lets up. And I'm not saying that a person cannot be in a bad mood. I'm not saying that they have to be happy-go-lucky all the time, like Jeremiah. What I don't like in particular is when we treat these man babies like a project. A passion project of the heart, if you will, and we force women to be the ones who teach them how to become a better person. The onus is on the women to change the man, instead of allowing the man to be the person who changes himself. Does that make any sense? I feel like I've said this so many times throughout this video, and my other videos, but I really hate it when men are not held accountable for their actions and their female partners are forced to mother them. And I detest that. It grosses me out because unfortunately that is how women are treated in society. We are the inferior sex according to the patriarchy, but we have to educate men so they can become the better versions of themselves. And these are the superior beings, the ones that we need to teach and baby because God forbid they have a temper tantrum. It's just annoying, and I just find that to be incredibly hypocritical. Like, if men are so strong and capable, then why do they need us to pick up the slack? You know what I mean? Like, if men are the superior beings, why don't they act like it? Why do they rely on us so much to give them advice and take care of them and all that stuff? Like, understandably, when you're in a partnership, you should help each other out. I just don't like it when it's an unfair amount of time and effort and emotional labor that is thrust upon women, and the same is not reciprocated by the man. That's all I have to say about that. So Conrad sucks, and I mentioned all the things I didn't like about this before, but again, a lot of the issues that I have with these books is the fact that they are so outdated because they were written back 2009. 2010, 11, 12, etc. And there was still a lot of fat phobia, homophobia back then. Unfortunately, there still is now, but it was way more rampant and bald and in your face than it is now. And with books like this, it really brings to light a lot of the issues that we still have in our society, and the fact that in the new version, they decided to just keep this stuff in there instead of taking it out or finding a way to change it, sanitize it a little bit. I just didn't like the amount of hatred and flack certain demographics got from these teenagers. And I get it. Like, when you're a teenager, you say stupid things, you say mean things, but it was just very blatant. Another thing I didn't like about Belly as a character is that she's very judgmental in a way where she doesn't quite try to understand other people or how they think. She's very anti-drug, and like I mentioned before, certain drugs have come a long way. Many of them can be medicinal, and demonizing drugs while normalizing alcoholism is a double-edged sword, I believe, because there are a lot of people who benefit from certain drugs and their medicinal uses, and demonizing it, what I fear, is a reason why it took us so long to get to a place where we can actually use these things for good and helping out people in a more effective and natural way. And I have mentioned this before, that I know people in my own life who need these so-called drugs in order to make their lives better and easier, and so they are more functional as a human, and stripping that from them because you think all drugs are bad is incredibly selfish, and I just don't like it. And again, I understand that she's a young girl. She'll grow up and learn, maybe, I don't know. At this rate, I don't think she's ever going to learn because she's always positively reinforced and enabled throughout all these books. She's never forced to change, so she doesn't change. That's the main problem with this story overall. Also in this book, I didn't like how Taylor was just an overall a very shitty friend. She knew that Belly was into the Fisher brothers, so she decided to string them along, flirting with every guy, kind of playing with them like they're toys. But again, I don't like it when people treat others like sexual objects, like objectifying them to the point where they only see them as this attractive thing that they want to consume. I don't like it when people perceive others like that. Even when women do it to men, I don't think it's a very healthy outlook on how we perceive other people. Luckily for us, Taylor does calm down throughout the series. She's not as boy crazy or man-centric at the very end, which I really did appreciate. I think Taylor's character arc is probably one of the best ones of the series. She's the only character that changes at all, but also for the better. So my controversial take here is that Taylor is my favorite character of the series overall. I really did like how in the series they made her and Steven a couple. I thought they were really cute. I definitely am cheering them on. I think they're a good match. And I think it was implied that in these books that they had a crush on each other. I will try to find the quote, but I can't really. I'm not sure where it is. But otherwise, let's move on to the second book, and that one is called It's Not Summer Without You. So this is the second book in the series, and we pick up after Belly and Conrad break up. And again, I have found, and this is a pattern that Jenny Han has in her other series too, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, where she ends the first book on a cliffhanger, right? Belly and Conrad are in his car and they're driving, and then we have this huge time jump where she cuts past all the interesting stuff. We don't even get to see them in a relationship together except through flashbacks. And I really hate it when authors do that, when they introduce a really cool concept or they open up the floodgates for this whole plot line only to abandon it and just pretend like it never happened. I don't like that. I'm a big believer in picking up where you left off from the first book if there's a cliffhanger. Otherwise, it's like, what was the point of that? So this book is way more plot heavy than the other story, and it's much more of a character heavy plot, meaning that this plot is influenced by the characters, their actions, and other characters' reactions. And this book made me hate Conrad with a fiery burning passion of 1,000 suns. Like, I thought I hated him before. This book made me hate him so much more than I thought was even possible. So first and foremost, we start off the book and it's now dual POV. So we have Jeremiah's point of view and Belly's point of view. And through Jeremiah's eyes, we see how much he's really falling for Belly and recognizing these brand new feelings that he has for her, which again, I am team Jeremiah, at least for now. And one reason that I do like Jeremiah in these books, first and foremost, is because he is the only one who treats Belly with respect, at least at first. We'll get into that later on because I know you guys probably have heard what happened in season 3. And that's going to be a very interesting conversation. I'm excited to get into it, but let's start here. So Jeremiah chapter 8, page 55, I can pinpoint the exact moment everything changed. It was last summer. So Jeremiah is starting to recognize and see Belly through a new lens. He sees her as more of a potential romantic partner rather than just a friend. He's noticing her bra strap. He said he's never noticed that before because unlike some people, she's not an object to him. And then he recalls the summer, like the past summer, the one that was covered in the first book, and he is talking about how when she hugs Conrad, she has a certain look on her face, and then he was scared that his feelings for her were going to change, how he saw her and who she was to him. And then he says, I stepped around Conrad, grabbed her up, and said something stupid and made her laugh, and then she was just Belly again, and that was a relief because I didn't want her to be anything but just Belly. So that was really sweet. I really liked how Jeremiah, his main conflict with asking Belly out and wanting to be in a romantic relationship with her has nothing really to do with the fact like Conrad, where he just denies his feelings and suppresses them, pushes them down because he's scared to be vulnerable. Jeremiah loves Belly on a platonic level. We've seen it, we understand it, and it's very obvious to us that he has strong feelings for her, but he doesn't want a romantic relationship to ruin their friendship. So that's Jeremiah's main conflict. That's why he's warring within himself whether or not he wants to tell Belly that he has feelings for her, which I think is really sweet because it shows that he cares so much about her that he would rather push his own feelings to the side, sacrifice his future with her as her boyfriend just so she can stay in his life. And I think that is a really interesting conflict, especially for a male character to have, because it shows some emotional maturity on his level where he understands how things can get awkward if they break up. Right, things go south. And then we go to Belly's point of view. Now, Belly is understandably very upset because Susanna has officially died. So when this book starts, Susanna has died, everyone's dealing with their grief in their own way, and Belly is lashing out at everyone around her, especially her mother. Are we even surprised? So a little bit of background of this scene. So Taylor is trying to be a supportive friend for Belly. She doesn't really know how to navigate this whole grief thing, so she's doing it the best Taylor way that she knows how, which is to try to distract Belly with boys and parties and clothes and making her laugh. It kind of goes back and forth, but in this one scene, Taylor is helping her with her makeup and she's trying to make Belly feel good. I love your hair like this. You look sort of like a Native American, like a Cherokee princess or something. Again, okay, well, interesting comparison, but okay. I started to laugh, but then I stopped myself. Taylor caught my eye in the mirror and said, it's okay to laugh, you know. It's okay for you to have fun. And then Belly says, I know, but she reveals that she didn't. So after Susanna's death, the light has kind of gone out of Belly's life. She's grieving in a way where it's just hard for her to feel any other emotion other than just like emptiness, you know, numbness, just blatant melancholy. And then she gets upset and punishes other people when they don't act the same way that she does because, you know, everyone reacts to grief the same way because that's how that works. And again, I know she's a teenage girl, but still, girl, learn empathy. Not that hard. And then she says, before we left, I stopped by my mother's office. She was sitting at her desk with folders and stacks of papers. Susanna had made my mother the executor of her will, and there was a lot of paperwork involved with that, I guessed. You didn't ask your mom? Hey mom, can I help you? Can I sit with you? Work on this together? No? Okay. My mother was on the phone with Susanna's lawyer, a lot going over things. She wanted to go perfect Beck's last wishes. And then she goes over all the things that Susanna gave her. She gave Belly a lot of jewelry and necklace to wear on her wedding day. And she gave her and Steven some money for college, which I thought was really sweet. This is when they're going to the funeral, and Belly is upset that her mother is not just a puddle of tears for her friend's funeral. Which again, everyone grieves in different ways, and she's just upset that her mother is not acting the way that she wants her to act. Meaning she's not acting the way that Susanna would act if the roles were flipped. So Belly, as they're going to the funeral, reflects back on how her mother is very robotic in a way where she doesn't really emote. the normal way, and by normal I mean the Susanna way, and she gets upset that her mother, upon telling Belly that Beck is gone, she just doesn't react the way that Belly does. I'm not sure when I started crying. When I got started, I couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. My mother crossed the room and knelt down on the floor with me, hugging me, rocking me back and forth. But she didn't cry. She wasn't even there. She was an upright reed in empty harbor. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Laurel, her mother, had a lot more time to really sit and think and process what was happening. And some parents just aren't comfortable with crying in front of their kids. And maybe she just wants to be a strong person for Belly instead of them both crying. That's just how some people operate. I'm sure she cried. I'm sure she was very upset. Some people just don't like showing their emotions. And that's just how they are. So then they finally get to the funeral, and this is when Belly informs us that she hasn't even talked to Conrad since the prom. And we'll get to that scene soon. It's a doozy. So she and Conrad broke up over prom because God forbid this man lets Belly feel any happiness whatsoever. And she now has to go find him. So her mother tells her to go find Conrad and bring them down so that way they're ready for the funeral. So then the funeral happens. It goes well. It was a closed casket. They bury her. They go back to the house to have the reception. Is that what it's called for a funeral? The little get-together meal buffet that they have at the house afterwards. So they're back at the beach house. So Conrad disappears because, of course he does, and she goes to find him, and she finds him with someone else. He was lying on the couch with his head in a girl's lap. She was running her hands along the top of his head like they belonged there. Okay. Because once Belly stakes her claim on a man, no other woman can touch him. I guess that's the rule here. And then Belly, in her head, this is her inner monologue, she says, everything in me seized up, pulled in tight. I had seen her at the funeral. I thought she was really pretty and I wondered who she was. She looked South Asian, like she might be Indian. Okay. I guess we needed a description of her and how she looked. She had dark hair, dark eyes, was wearing a black miniskirt and a white and black polka dot blouse, and a headband. She was wearing a black headband. What's wrong with the black headband? I love headbands. I think they're an amazing accessory, and I hate it when people are like, oh, headbands are so dumb. I'm like, okay, yeah, you say that now, but wait until you're sitting outside and your hair is going like 50 different directions. At least a headband like secures it a little bit. Plus it looks cute, and I think they're really chic. And then Belly informs them that there is food, and then she leaves, and then Conrad, because he just can't let anything go, he runs after her. What do you want? I said, shaking him off. Let go of me. That was Aubrey, he said, letting go. Aubrey, the girl who broke Conrad's heart. I'd pictured her differently. This is about to get really interesting, you guys. I'd pictured her blonde. This girl was prettier than what I had pictured. Again, I don't know why we need to know this. Such useless information, but this is what Belly is thinking, so I guess this is what we have to read. I can never compete with a girl like that. Why do you have to? You guys broke up. Belly, why are you competing with some random girl over your ex? A man who broke your heart, who treated you like crap. Belly has this very interesting perspective when it comes to the Fisher boys. She feels very possessive of them, obviously, but the worst part is when she breaks up with them, she thinks that she still has a stake or a claim on them. This makes it feel really unhealthy because Belly feels like she still owns them. Even when she breaks up with them, she broke up with Conrad, now she says, oh, I'm competing with this girl. There is no competition. She is now dating him. They're together now, obviously. The competition is over. You exited out of that relationship for good reasons, and now you're upset that someone else is now there comforting him. And I get it, this relationship didn't turn out the way that you wanted. That doesn't mean that you own this person now. And she'll do the exact same thing with Jeremiah in the third book. Because yes, they do actually break up in the third book. He didn't cheat on her. They were broken up. And then she got mad that he slept with someone else, even though she broke up with him. Because that's how Belly works. I don't like this character at all. And when we get to that, we'll talk about it later in the book and the show. It's different. I haven't seen the show, so I don't know what the cheating scandal was. So if you guys know, let me know down in the comments. Make sure you warn us that it's going to be a spoiler, because I don't want anyone to read that unwittingly and find out what happens. Even though it's all over the internet, I would just be careful with that. And then Belly says, sorry, I interrupted your little moment. And then he tells her, oh, grow up. Oh boy. And then Belly says here, there are moments in life that you wish with all your heart you could take back. Like just erase from existence. Like if you could, stop saying like, I do this all the time. It's really annoying when other people do it because I hear how annoying it is and I get mad at myself when I do this. Stop saying the word like all the time. You'd erase yourself right out of existence too, just to make that moment not exist. So I do like what she is saying here. It does show some maturity on her part, that she understands that this next scene was just not her best moment. And again, it happens. They're both grieving, they're both upset that Susanna is dead, and they're taking it out on each other. What I said next was one of those moments for me. On the day of his mother's funeral, to the boy I loved more than I ever loved anything or anyone, yeesh, I said, go to hell. I mean, I think that's pretty appropriate. For this moment, they're mentally sparring with each other. It makes sense that they're both saying things that they're going to regret later, and I don't know why Belly always feels the need to just lie down and take it whenever Conrad comes out swinging. And then she says, it was the worst thing I've ever said to anyone ever. Even worse than when you called your friend a whore. I guess it's not mean if it's true. I guess that's Belly's philosophy. It's okay to be misogynistic towards women, but actually holding Conrad accountable and matching him tit for tat in a verbal sparring match, that's bad. I hate this. The look on his face made me want to die. Good. It confirmed every mean and low thing I'd ever thought about myself, the stuff you hope and pray no one will ever know about you. Because if they knew, they would see the real you and they would despise you. So you hide yourself from people and you expect them to love you? It's kind of sad, Belly, that you surround yourself with people that you're not comfortable enough with to be your vulnerable true self. I think that is a mark that maybe these people aren't worth your time. And then Conrad said, I should have known you'd be like this. I asked him, what do you mean? He said, forget it. No, say it. And then he says, I knew it was a bad idea starting something with you. You're just a kid. It was a huge mistake. Just a kid. Just a reminder. These two characters are 2 years apart. Conrad is just starting college and already he thinks of himself as this super mature adult. And then he calls his ex-girlfriend a kid. So you dated a kid. That's what that means. That says a lot more about you than it does about her. Like, oh, you're acting so immature. Yeah, she's younger. She's allowed to act immature. She's a teenager.
And you're just acting like a child! I am a child. What's your excuse?
And so are you. You're 19. You're both still teenagers. I hate it when men infantilize women and deflect from their emotions and their own accountability and accusing them of acting childish when they're acting emotional, because they don't like it when women's emotions are aimed at them and they're trying to rationalize within themselves that, oh, these women are emotional, childish beings and whatever they say doesn't really matter. They're basically taking away the power from their argument because Belly is calling him out for really terrible behavior, and instead of actually owning up to his terrible mistakes, Conrad is deflecting the blame onto her, saying that she's childish instead of recognizing how he's in the wrong. And then she says, I hate you. And Conrad says, good. The way he looked at me then, pitying and fed up and just over it made me feel sick. I never want to see you again, I said. I pushed past him and I ran up the staircase so fast I tripped on the top step. I fell right onto my knees hard. I think I heard someone gasp. I could barely see through my tears. Blindly I got up and ran to the guest room. It wasn't Conrad I hated, it was myself. Well, you should hate him a little bit too. He's quite insufferable. Then her dad comes over and he says, what happened with you and Conrad, Belly? Did you have a fight? Did you two break up? Dad, I can't talk about this stuff with you. Could you just go? I want to be alone. The thing that also bugs me a little bit is that these two are essentially causing a scene at someone else's funeral in the show. I saw clips of this scene in the show and I just found it to be incredibly selfish. Like, this is not your day. Have this conversation some other time when your emotions aren't running high. And I just thought that was kind of selfish that she was airing out her grievances to Conrad at his mother's funeral. And I also don't think it was good of him either, as the adult in this situation, for him to lash out at her. And then to wrap up this interesting scene, she said, I hoped Conrad listened to me. I hoped I never saw him again. If I ever had to look at him again, if he looked at me the way he did that day, it would break me. So she's understandably very embarrassed and upset that so this book does kind of flip-flop all over the place. We have a lot of flashbacks, we have a lot of flash forwards, and that's the kind of thing I don't really like about these books, is because if we're taking so much time in the past, why didn't you just write the book about that? It doesn't make any sense. And this is what I also didn't like about the book, The Six of Crows, is because half the book was just us in flashbacks, in the past, to explain who these characters are, their origin story, where they came from, what happened to get them to this point. The whole time I was reading that, I was thinking to myself, why didn't you just write a prequel book? Getting all these characters together and then having the actual plot happen. You know what I mean? It just took up so much time from the actual book, and yes, it was useful information, but when you're getting to a point where you have a flashback within a flashback within a flashback, that's a sign for you as an author that maybe that's actually the book that you want to write, not this one. And that's my biggest pet peeve with books nowadays, is that authors, no offense, focus on the more boring storylines rather than the ones that are actually interesting and important. Like, I would much rather see Conrad and Belly actually in a relationship together instead of just talking about their breakup and having them summarize what their relationship was like. Because again, we're only getting a one-sided perspective of what the relationship was, and I much rather see for myself and garner my own opinion by reading through their conversations and seeing how they treated each other. So Belly is now hanging out in Taylor's room because they're not going to the beach house that summer. It's just too awkward, and now she's trying to figure out how she's going to move on without the Fisher boys in her life, because Conrad's in college. She doesn't want to go back to the beach house without Susanna. It's just too painful. Mr. Fisher is probably going to be there, and it's going to be a weird dynamic overall. So they're not going that summer, and instead she's hanging out with Taylor. So they're still at prom. Taylor just dropped this bomb, and she and Davis are going to go have their own little intimate moment after the after prom party. And she goes up to Belly, like the good friend that she's turning into, and she says, Belly, don't take his shit. Talking about Conrad. This is your prom night. I mean, he's your boyfriend, right? At least make him dance with you. So I do like how Taylor is pushing her to be confrontational with Conrad, not putting up with his horrific behavior, and basically saying, hey, this is how a boyfriend acts. You go to the prom, you dance with your girlfriend. Even if it's not like the best night of your life, at least just go and try to have fun. Try to get something good out of it. That's the least you could do for someone that you claim to be in love with. Now she's also jealous about Taylor and Davis because she realizes that Taylor is taking a huge step forward and she's basically leaving Belly behind. Taylor wouldn't be a virgin anymore. She always said she'd be first. I mean, it makes sense. She does date a lot, so statistically, it's a bigger chance of her getting to be with someone that way rather than Belly, who's constantly sitting around and waiting for Conrad to notice her. And then Conrad comes up and he offers to get her a drink, so at least he is helping her out with her basic needs. And then Belly says, no, do you want to dance? And he's like, do we have to? She says, come on, you're the one who supposedly taught me how to slow dance. And then Conrad finally concedes and he says, let's dance. And then she says, I'm glad you came. He says, what? Because music's so loud he can't hear her, so she says, I'm glad you came, much louder. And then he says, me too. His voice sounded odd. I remember that. The way his voice caught. So I think at this point, Conrad was looking for an out because in my personal headcanon, he realized that maybe this relationship just wasn't working out. He doesn't really call her a lot. They don't really talk a whole bunch. Long distance relationships are really tough, especially when you're in high school and college. And I think that quite possibly he wanted to be with someone else. That's just my personal belief, but we'll see, because there's no reason why he should be acting this way. If he really loved this person, he really appreciated them and respected them, he would not be acting like this. So kind of feels like Conrad wants out of the relationship and he's just kind of looking for that avenue out because he's too much of a coward to actually break up with Belly and let her go off and be happy without him. And then after they dance, Belly tells him the after prom doesn't start till midnight. Conrad said, I want to go somewhere, you and me, I want us to talk. All of a sudden I felt dizzy. If Conrad wanted to go somewhere where we could be alone, where we could talk, it meant he wanted to break up with me. So she can sense it too. And then later on in the parking lot, it started to drizzle. And then Conrad says, I might head back to school. I have that exam on Monday and everything. Would it be all right if I didn't go to the after prom? So he's abandoning her in her time of need. Even worse, he's planning on breaking up with her on prom night. He should have just let her go with Corey. Honestly, he should have just said, well, why don't you go with Corey, and that could just be their method of breaking up. But he is a terrible person. Like, do not break up with someone at a social event like this, at a big deal like this. Don't break up with them on their birthday, during a holiday, during prom, something big like this. This is not fair to them, because now you're muddying the waters. You're making this a bad experience. They're going to have bad memories about a night that's supposed to be magical and fun thanks to you. Just either break up with them before, let them go with someone else, or just be a good person and just do your best to make it a really fun night, and then later on you can break their heart. And then Belly tells him, I don't want you to leave. And she thinks if we get inside his car, it's all over. He'll drop me off and then he'll drive back to school and he'll never come back, and that'll be it. And Belly asks him, did I do something wrong? It's not you. It's him, honey. Please get with the program. It's always going to be Conrad's fault. And then he says, no, it's not you. She says, I want to hit him, which is never a good sign in a relationship. And then she's the one who actually breaks up with him. Okay, fine then. If you won't say it, I will. if I won't say what, that we're over, that whatever this is, it's over. I mean, it is, right? Rain makes everything more dramatic. Now she's crying, she's upset, and Conrad is trying to calm her down. He says, just wait a minute. Don't leave it like this. You were about to leave it like this. Oh, but because it's Belly who's breaking up with you, now you're trying to be the noble hero. Got it. That makes sense. And she says, you're the one leaving it like this. And then she runs away. As she always does. And then he's calling after her, but she doesn't turn around. Then I heard him slam his fist on the hood of his car. That brings me back to the kissing booth, which was just terrible. And then the next day, Steven finally comes home, and it's late at night. He's still wearing his tux, and then he comes into Belly's room, and he says, Conrad's not worth it, okay? And Belly is surprised because Steven was Conrad's #1 fan. He always had been. And then now he's finally saying, you don't deserve this. It's not worth it. And then she later on tells her mother that they broke up. And then her mother tells her, I was afraid this was going to happen, and Belly's upset. Personally, I don't think that Laurel is handling this a very good way because she's basically making Belly feel upset that other people were emotionally involved in their relationship and now she's letting them down. And I don't care. Even in my relationship, if something happened, it would affect other people, but at the same time, it's like, you're not the victim here. Your daughter just got dumped on prom night, and the first thing you can think of is the fact that your best friend is going to be disappointed. I just didn't like that. But again, maybe Conrad wasn't trying to break up with her. Maybe he was, or maybe he was putting it off until the next day. But Belly essentially interpreted the fact that he was going to dump her, and then she just took it upon herself to do it. So she would look like the bad guy. I'm sure that was Conrad's whole plan the whole time, is thinking, I'm just going to treat her poorly so she breaks up with me so I don't have to man up and do it myself. I've heard of those stories before where men have done that, and it's just awful because it just shows the complete and utter lack of respect that they have for their partner. Is if you're not happy, they're not happy. Instead of making them more miserable, why don't you go let them be happy? Oh yeah, but that would require you to actually like that person and feel for them and love them and respect them. And then we cut to Jeremiah's point of view, and he's looking at this through that lens, and he says, when my mom found out Conrad was taking Belly to prom, she freaked out. She was insanely happy. You'd have thought they were getting married or something. I hadn't seen her happy like that in a long time. A part of me was glad he could give her that. Mostly I was just jealous. My mom kept calling him at school, reminding him of things to make sure he rented his tux in time, that he got a corsage. So even when his mom was breathing down his neck, playing the helicopter parent, he still couldn't do anything right. And then Susanna, she made him promise that he'd be sweet to her, the perfect gentleman. If you have to tell someone to treat their partner with respect, that's not a good sign. That's a red flag. And then she says, make it a night she'll always remember, talking to Conrad. And Jeremiah is upset at Conrad because he's acting like a child, and he's resentful of it because he wants to take Belly to the prom, and he would have done a better job. We've already established this. And then Jeremiah says he got to take Belly to her prom, and he acted like it was some big chore. If it had been me, I would have done it right. And then when Conrad is reporting back to his mother and Jeremiah, telling them how it went, Conrad says, she looked really pretty. She wore a purple dress. My mom nodded, smiling. Why couldn't you tell Belly that? I know exactly the one. How'd the corsage look? He shifted in his seat. It looked nice. So Conrad is a liar and an idiot, and Jeremiah is the only one that can really pick up on it, and he is just upset that Conrad got to go on this big date with Belly, and he basically spoiled it for her. And then he calls Conrad out. So Jeremiah, once Susanna leaves the room, he turns to Conrad and he says, so you guys danced the whole night, huh? Because he knows Conrad. He knows that Conrad doesn't like to dance, and he's calling his bluff. Just leave it, Conrad said, leaning his head back against the couch. Did you even go to the prom, or did you lie to Mom about that too? He glared at me. Yeah, I went. Well, somehow I doubt you guys danced all night, I said. I felt like a jerk, but I couldn't let it go. Why do you have to be such a dick? What do you care about the prom? I shrugged. I just hope you didn't ruin it for her. What are you even doing here anyway? And then Conrad tells Jeremiah, well, we can't all be Mr. Prom King. Once again, denying, defending, and deflecting. The typical Conrad formula for any kind of conversation in which he refuses to acknowledge the consequences of his actions and how poorly he treats people. So Jeremiah and Belly are going to college, and they are trying to find out where Conrad is. So Belly and Jeremiah go to his dorm room to try to find him because he hasn't been talking to anyone in days. Once they get there, they're talking to his RA named Eric, who supposedly sends Conrad pornographic videos. I don't know why he would tell Belly that, or why he wouldn't just block him, but whatever. Then a random girl comes into the room, and Belly, of course, because everything's a competition whenever another girl's involved with Conrad, and she thinks to herself, oh, I'm prettier than her. Why does that matter? So she and Jeremiah are trying to solve the mystery of where Conrad went. Then the girl who was there, she says, I think he said he was going to the beach to surf or something. He's so crazy. And keep in mind, this is right before exams, so Conrad is blowing off exams because he needs to go throw a temper tantrum at the beach house. So now they know that Conrad is going to the beach house, but before they leave, Belly is snooping around in his desk, and she finds the infinity necklace that he gave her. So this was a necklace that Conrad never gave her, but she finds it, and she decides to put it on because in her mind, she thinks it was for me. He bought it for me. Here is my proof that he really did care. Isn't it so sad how some people are so desperate to be right that they find any sliver of evidence to prove themselves right? It's confirmation bias. Belly, this man does not love and respect you. He only sees you as a possession, an extension of himself that he doesn't want anyone else to have. That's not healthy. He thinks that he can have you because, he staked his claim on you years ago. You're his. He doesn't want to see you with any other man. He would much rather string you along and torture you for years than actually man up and be a good person for you. That's my interpretation of Conrad. Feel free to let me know what you think of him down in the comments, but that's just how I feel about it. So they leave the dorm room and they're heading to Cousins, the beach house where they spent every single summer. But so before that, she thinks back to when she and Conrad had this date. And he is driving over to see her. And I believe that this was the cliffhanger from the first book where he drives over to her. So he drives all the way from Boston, where he goes to college, to go see her. And she says, I can't believe you're really here. He says, me neither. Are you still coming with me? Yes, I told him. It felt like nothing else existed outside of that world, that moment. There was just us. Everything that had happened that summer and every summer before it, and it all led up to this. To now. Sitting next to him in the passenger seat felt like an impossible gift. It felt like the best Christmas gift of my life. Because he was smiling at me and he wasn't somber or solemn or sad or any of the other S words I had come to associate with Conrad. He was light. He was all the best parts of himself. And he tells her, I think I'm going to become a doctor. So the one thing I will say when it comes to their relationship is at least Conrad has an idea of what he wants to do with his life as opposed to Jeremiah, who is definitely much more of a flighty personality. He doesn't really know what to do with his future yet, which again is normal. A lot of people in college don't really know what they want to do. They don't have a sense of direction in their life, and other people do. At a very young age, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I loved writing. I loved teaching. I wanted to become a teacher when I grew up. That's something that I've held on to for my entire life. Other people don't feel that way. So one of the things that I really hate about how Belly always compares the two brothers is she faults Jeremiah for not knowing what to do with his life, and then she exalts or upholds Conrad, puts him on this pedestal because, at least he has a sense of direction. And I think to myself, yes, but just because he knows what to do with his life does not make him a good partner or a better partner than Jeremiah. So I will say that's one of the points of contention that we will see in the third book, and we'll get into that later. So she's reflecting back on the good time that she had with Conrad, and I just wish that we actually got to see more of this because this was actually nice, and we only get to see the bad parts of Conrad, and it would be nice to see more of the positive parts because then we would be able to understand why Belly likes him so much. But I will say that a lot of the times when Conrad is acting happy or really having fun for the first time, it does kind of feel like love bombing in a way where his moods are just so erratic that you can't really tell what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis. That's not a sign of a good partner. That level of instability is not good for the long run because if you wake up every day wondering if today's going to be a good day without the certainty that I can rely on my partner to put their best foot forward, to try to be the best person that they can, and having the bad days be more rare than the good days. If you're really struggling to have any good moments in your relationship, that's a big sign that that relationship is not going very well. So in the present time, Jeremiah and Belly arrive at the house. They go inside. They haven't been in months, right? This summer, they skipped it. They haven't been back in a while. And then they see that Conrad is there. And Conrad actually had the nerve to look annoyed when he saw us. He just come in from surfing, his hair was wet, he still had his suit on. I felt dazed, even though it had only been 2 months, it was like seeing a ghost. And then he says, what the hell are you doing here? As if he's surprised that people are concerned for him. He's acting like his actions don't affect other people. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things about Conrad is that he just moves about his life without a care or consideration for other people. And it gets on your nerves. Jeremiah tells him, I'm here to pick you up and and take you back to school. You really messed up, man. Dad's going out of his mind. Conrad waved him off. Tell him to go screw himself. I'm staying. Con, you missed 2 classes and you've got midterms on Monday. You can't just bail. They'll kick you out of summer school. That's my problem. And what's she doing here? She has a name, Conrad. My goodness. So Jeremiah is trying to be the good influence, right? He's trying to be the good brother and help Conrad get out of this funk. And Conrad is angry and he's just lashing out and hurting people. And then he says, why do you want to help me? Why are you even here? He says, I thought you never wanted to see me again. You hate me, remember? And he is being sarcastic, very belittling, very rude and disrespectful. And Belly says, I don't hate you. And then she runs away. This is a giant theme with their relationship. Every time they are in a confrontational place, Belly always runs away because she cannot handle her feelings. So Belly runs to the beach to find solace in nature. Jeremiah joins her on the beach and he says, well, that went well. I never should have come, Belly says. Jeremiah ignored me. 10 to 1, the only thing he has in the fridge is beer, which is actually true. Conrad, who is a underage boy, man-child, if you will, he somehow got his hands on beer because I guess he has a friend that works in the liquor store. And I'm like, give me the number of this liquor store. I'm going to get that idiot fired. And then at this point, I felt really bad for Jeremiah because it's very clear that ever since Susanna died, he's now kind of taken on this paternal role with his older brother, which is not his responsibility. And I hate the fact that everyone else has to take care of Conrad instead of just letting Conrad take care of himself. I wanted to help you too, I told him. I meant I still do. You shouldn't have to deal with this all on your own. And for a brief moment, Jeremiah looked like his father. Who else will? So this is kind of the difficult part here because it's very obvious that Jeremiah has been put in this very tricky situation and Conrad should be the person who's trying to fix himself and make his life better. He's not doing that. God forbid this man actually has to change or be held accountable at all. So Belly goes out to get some food and supplies. She brings it back and Jeremiah and Conrad are drinking beer out on the back deck. Of course, because Jenny Han loves underage drinking, and then Belly joins in, of course, and then Jeremiah is surprised because she doesn't drink. Since when does our belly button drink? He said. I'm almost 17, I reminded him. Don't you think I'm too old for you to call me that? Jeremiah says, I know how old you are. And they start eating, and then Conrad reaches into the paper bag without even thanking Belly for doing anything, and then she says, you're welcome, by the way. Conrad refuses to leave the house because it turns out that Mr. Fisher is actually selling the home. And the reason why he's doing that is one, because it's very hard for him to be in that house without Susanna. It makes sense. Like, this was a place that she loved. This was where the kids grew up. It's very hard to be there without thinking of her. And he wants to also sell it because it's a money pit. No one's living there. They're not renting it out. Conrad is basically setting up camp there. And selling a house like that could be really beneficial for paying off college loans, especially for a man who is going to college to be a doctor. I'm sorry, but getting your bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in order to become a professional doctor is not cheap. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is probably as much as the house cost. And we'll get into this later, but Conrad is absolutely refusing to let his father sell the home because it is his mother's home. Now, when someone is married, they're legally contracted together. Everything belongs to the partner if the husband or wife dies, right? That's how that works. It's a business transaction. That's how weddings and marriages have always been. It's been a transactional thing, and it still can be, unless you have a prenup, because then you have a division of funds and finances and whatnot. So because Susanna, she had a will, right? And Laurel is a benefactor of that will, so she knows who the house belongs to, and technically it belongs to Mr. Fisher, so he can do whatever he wants with it. I think he's being very sensible with the fact that he's selling the house to get the money to pay for his son's college funds. I think Mr. Fisher could have handled this a whole lot better if he told his boys what was going on. He's saying, hey, we're selling the house. I'm sorry, but there's nothing else we can do. Susanna understood how much you guys love this house, but you guys aren't going to come back here. You guys are going off to college. You're adults now. It's different, right? We're aging out of this. The era of childhood is gone. I think that would have been a really interesting cycle for them to go back to the house one last time, to enjoy the summer one last time, and then to really sit and relish the memory of Susanna and then sell the house later on to a family who's actually going to use it and love it as much as they did when they were kids. And the fact that Conrad is basically claiming squatters' rights on the house just shows a level of immaturity that he has, because instead of actually confronting his father in a mature adult-like fashion, he's deciding to just throw a temper tantrum yet again. So July 4th comes around, and even though Belly is supposed to be with Taylor, she decides to stay at the house instead, of course. And then she talks about how Conrad dictated the mood of the house, how everyone else felt. Nothing would feel right again until things were right with Conrad. How many red flags are we at now? I've lost track, honestly. This man-child is honestly the worst. I hate it. Belly reflects back on one of the handful of times that Conrad was actually happy, which is few and far in between. So Stephen ends up calling her, and he tells her, hey, I know you're not with Taylor, where are you? Then she explains the situation to him, and Stephen is hurt that Jeremiah called Belly instead of him. Then she tells him to chill out, and she's handling everything because Conrad is in trouble, and then she hangs up the phone and looks outside because there is a red Honda in the driveway. And then she goes downstairs to see what's going on, and then she sees Conrad open the door and a woman walked in. She was petite with bleached blonde hair that was in a messy bun. She wore black pants and a silk coral blouse. So this is actually the real estate agent who's trying to sell the house. She says, why, hello there, surprised to see Conrad because no one's supposed to be there at the house. Conrad says, can I help you? She says, you must be Conrad. He spoke on the phone. I'm Sandy Donati, your dad's real estate agent. She wagged her finger at him playfully. You told me your dad changed his mind about the sale. So Conrad is trying to intercept and put himself in a situation that he really has no business being in. Yes, it is his mother's vacation home, but at the same time, she didn't give the home to them, which I'm actually kind of surprised about, that she didn't give them the vacation home, probably because they were adults at the time. Once again, I don't like the fact that Conrad is not only sabotaging his father's sale, but he's also sabotaging this poor woman. It's her job to sell the house. If she doesn't sell a house, she doesn't get paid. After seeing the way he treats this poor woman, I'm surprised that Belly has any lingering feelings for him at all. He's atrocious. She says, I'm just here to check on the house, make sure everything's coming along and getting packed up. Yeah, I sent the movers away, Conrad said casually. So you're just ruining everyone's job. Gosh, I hate this. And she says, I really wish you hadn't done that. I was told the house would be empty. And he says, you were given erroneous information. I'll be here for the rest of the summer. And then he gestures over to Belly and tells her that she's my girlfriend. You guys broke up. What's going on here? I don't understand. And then Conrad continues to be horrible to this poor woman who's found herself in the crosshairs of the Fisher boys and their drama. And he says, well, the thing is, Sandy, it's not his house to sell. It's my mother's house, actually. Did my dad tell you that? She says, yes. And he says, then I guess he also told you that she's dead. She says, yes, he did tell me that. I'm very sorry for your loss. He's making this way more uncomfortable than it should be. And technically, Conrad, since your dad is married to your mother and it was her house, guess what? Now it's his house. That's how this works. It's not your house. You're not entitled to this house because you grew up there. It's just ridiculous. Then she finally realizes that she's not getting anywhere with Conrad, so she decides to exit out of the situation. She says, I'm going to talk things over with your dad, and then I'll be back. He says, you do that. Make sure you let him know the house is off the market. You can't make that decision, Conrad. This is a point where I really hated Conrad. I don't know how he behaved in the show. I'm guessing it wasn't that different. But it's always so funny whenever people make a comment about how, oh, Conrad's such a real man because he's standing up for himself. I'm like, no, he's being a jerk. Being a man does not constitute just random confrontational conversations, making other people uncomfortable, ruining other people's livelihoods, and just being an overall jerk. He's angry and moody all the time. He is a toddler trapped in the body of a man. Not that much of a man either. Apparently Corey Wheeler is taller than him, so just saying. So before we get to the part where Mr. Fisher comes and he tries to get Conrad to leave and let him sell the house, I do want to mention something very quickly that I think is incredibly toxic. So right now what I'm reading to you, I think speaks volumes about Belly's philosophy when it comes to relationships and the difference between what's healthy, what constitutes a tumultuous relationship. So here she says, how could two people who had once been passionately in love not even fight? Didn't they care enough to fight it out? To fight not just with each other, but also for their marriage? Were they ever really in love? Constantly fighting with your partner does not constitute a healthy marriage or relationship. Fighting all the time is not good. Just letting you know, you should not be fighting. You should be working things out in a healthy and constructive way, not just yelling at each other, throwing things around, threatening to break up with each other. So Taylor calls Belly up and she hears that they're throwing a party at the house, because of course they are. And then she tells Taylor about it and Taylor's like, oh, I want to come. And then she says, well, actually, I don't want you to come. So Taylor wants to come to the party. Belly says she's not invited. And then she's like, Taylor, She's like, quit saying my name like that. Like how? Like I'm a child. Well, then maybe you shouldn't act like one just because you aren't invited somewhere. Screw you, Belly. I put up with a lot. You are a really crappy best friend, you know that? True. Then she tells Taylor to shut up. Taylor says, don't you dare tell me to shut up. I have been nothing but supportive of you, Belly. I listen to all your Conrad BS, and I don't even complain. And then, like Conrad, Belly goes on the defensive, deflects all of her problems onto other people, and denies that she is a problem. And she's like, gee, Taylor, I'm so sorry I'm not fun anymore. Having someone you love die can do that. Don't weaponize Susanna's death in your favor. That's not how that works. And Taylor says, don't do that. Don't just blame it on that. You've been chasing after Conrad for as long as I've known you. It's getting pathetic. Get over it. He doesn't like you. Maybe he never did. And then Belly, because she's petty, questions Taylor's taste in men, and then she hangs up on her. At least I didn't give away my virginity to a guy who shaves his legs. Swimmers shave their legs. I don't see the problem. And then after Belly tries to do something nice for everyone, she tries to make them dinner for the party. So Jeremiah reflects on his feelings and realizes that no matter how hard he'll try, Conrad will always be the favorite in Belly's eyes, and she will love him no matter what. Like, to a scary fault. Conrad was full of shit. He liked her. He more than liked her. But he couldn't admit it, wouldn't man up. Conrad would never be that guy, the kind of guy Belly needed. Someone who would be there for her, someone she could count on. I could. If she let me, I could be that guy. I was pissed at him, but I had to admit I was relieved too. No matter how many times he hurt her, I knew that if he wanted her back, she was his. She always had been. But maybe now that Conrad wasn't standing in the way, she'd see me there too. So after the 4th of July party, they wake up and Belly's mother is there, and she's very upset because the house is trashed. Obviously, they just had a party with a bunch of underage teenagers drinking. And then Belly, like the boys, feels entitled to the house even though it's not her property. And then her mother accuses them of being irresponsible, and she says, we were going to clean it up, the mess, that is. This was our last night here, don't you get it? Mr. Fisher is selling the house, don't you care? Then Laurel says, do you really think you've helped matters by meddling? This isn't our business. How many times do I have to explain that to you? Thank you. Finally, a voice of reason. Then Belly says, it is so our business. Susanna would have wanted us to have the house. If she wanted you to have the house, why wasn't it in her will? Just asking for a friend. And then her mother finally calls Belly out because she is acting like a spoiled brat. You're acting like a spoiled brat. Can't you look beyond your own grief and think about someone else? It's not all about you. We all lost Beck. Feeling sorry for yourself isn't helping anything. On second thought, maybe she does deserve Conrad. And she says, I wish Susanna was my mother and not you. Then her mother slaps her across the face. I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't enjoy that. I don't condone violence, but there are some moments where I'm like, some people just really need a wake-up call. Everyone in their life, this is my personal belief, need at least one come-to-Jesus slap across the face to really get their point across. This could be a figurative slap, this could be a literal slap in the face, but we need a wake-up call. Belly needs that wake-up call, and she's just not getting it at all. So then Laurel apologizes to Belly. She goes to apologize to the boys for not being there for them more, even though technically it's Mr. Fisher's job to do that, but... And then she tells them, Adam and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. I can't stop him from selling the house if that's what he's set on. So she's accepted the fact that the house is going to be sold, but the kids are still trying to fight for it. And then she tells the boys that Mr. Fisher is coming over to the house to try to settle things. And then Laurel has a change of heart, and she actually is on the side of the boys because she wants to keep the house because it's Susanna's house. It reminds her of her, and she just doesn't want to part with it. Which I understand. It is very hard to give up those memories, which it makes sense. Like, this was their mother's house. It really means a lot to them, but they need to find a way to make it make sense, because this is a huge money pit. If a house is just sitting there unused, what's the point of it? But Mr. Fisher finally concedes because he's actually trying to be a good father, and he says, okay, fine, you want to keep the house, I'll make you a deal. And Mr. Fisher says, I want you back at school tomorrow. I want you to finish your exams. If you do that, the house is yours and Jeremiah's. So Jeremiah is happy, even though Conrad is being a rude little bitch right now. Sorry, like, for lack of a better term, he is being a bitch. Then he tells them, you have to make at least C's, no D's or F's, which makes sense. You know, C's get degrees. That's totally reasonable. Then Conrad hesitates, and Belly says, I knew right away what was wrong. Conrad didn't want to owe his dad anything. Good luck with that, because he's legally in charge of the house. So unfortunately, you're at his mercy. So you have to make sure that you actually get this done. And Conrad is upset. So the real reason why Conrad is upset is because he hasn't studied for his exams. So he's a little screwed. So now that everything is riding on Conrad, now they all have to help him study for his test, of course. So he passes the test with flying colors, so they're able to keep the house. Everyone's ecstatic, everyone's happy, but then at the very end, so after he passes the test with flying colors, they cement the deal with Mr. Fisher, and they know that, okay, they're going to keep the house at least for now. And then Conrad notices that Belly is wearing the necklace that she stole from his drawer in his dorm room. But the problem is, even though that she's wearing it, it symbolizes their love being infinite, right? It's a very obvious symbol. And she's wearing it even though she has confessed that she likes Jeremiah. Even worse, they just kissed. So they kiss on page 262. They're in the car. Belly is asking about Conrad. Jeremiah stops her to kiss her, and then she realizes that, oh, she actually likes Jeremiah. And they're kissing, and then Conrad just appears out of nowhere. Looking right at us, he had stopped short of the car. His face was white. He said, "No, don't stop. I'm the one who's interrupting." Then he turns and storms off, and he's upset at Belly, of course, for kissing his brother. And he asks her, "So you like Jeremiah now?" He meant to sound sarcastic and cruel, and he did, but he also sounded pained, like he cared about the answer, which made me feel glad and sad. "Okay, Dr. Seuss." I said, "I don't know. Does it matter to you if I do?" He stared at me, and then he leaned forward and touched the necklace around my neck, the one I'd been hiding under my shirt all day. "If you like Jeremiah, why are you wearing my necklace?" That's a very good question. So he wants her to give it back. She says no. He says, "It's not yours. I never gave it to you. You just took it." Which is true. It's the only time I'm actually agreeing with Conrad. And then Conrad officially ends things with Belly. There's no doubt in her mind. He is over her. He is releasing her so she can go be with Jeremiah. He tells her, "Go to Jeremiah. He's the one who wants you." Conrad said, "I don't. I never did." And then she runs away again. Gosh. Every conversation she has with this man-child, it always ends with her running away. And it's kind of funny, honestly. This could have easily been a comedy. So this entire thing was happening once they were taking Conrad back to college, and then he passes tests, the house is fine, they're still going to keep it around, everything's good to go. And then the story ends with Belly and Jeremiah officially getting together. I reached across and I took his hand and laced my fingers around his. It felt like the most right thing I'd done in a long time. I worried he let go, but he didn't. We held hands like that for the rest of the way home. So he takes her home like the good little gentleman that he is, and that officially concludes book 2. Now, I was super excited because, like I mentioned before, I am a huge Jeremiah fan. At least in this book, he was a much better character than he was previous one, because he just said some things that I just didn't like. But now he has grown and matured, and now he and Belly are getting together. So I was personally very excited, even though I had this feeling that they probably wouldn't be endgame, and unfortunately they aren't. But spoiler alert, she ends up with Conrad at the end, which I was very disappointed by, because in my eyes, I don't think he changed enough to warrant a change like that. And the reason why I'm upset at that is because neither of them really changed for the better. They just kind of stagnated, right? They just kind of stayed the same throughout the entire series, and they didn't really learn anything about each other or themselves enough to actually justify them getting back together and pretending like everything's so much better. Things are only going to get better if you actually try to. So this book is the third and final installment of the series. We'll always have summer, and this book takes place a few years after Belly and Jeremiah get together. So Belly and Jeremiah have been dating for 4 years. They are both in college. They basically spend every waking moment that they can together, and things are not going as well as Belly could have hoped, because it's very clear that she and Jeremiah are two very different people. Belly is more of a homebody, and Jeremiah is more of an extrovert. He's part of a fraternity, and he parties a lot. He's always out with the other sororities and his fraternity brothers, and it's just very obvious that they're just kind of diverging away, and they just don't have the same values or outlook on life as they did before. Because now Jeremiah, he just kind of wants to have fun and party. Again, nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly normal for people in college to just go out and explore and just try to figure out who they are. Not everyone has the answers right away, and I don't really like it when people fault others for not knowing what they want to do with their life. I mean, how many people get a degree and get a job in a very different field? Hundreds, thousands of people do. It is not indicative of their character or their morals if they don't know what to do with their life. It happens. Some people, it just takes a little while longer to get to that place. So I don't like when people criticize Jeremy for that, especially his girlfriend, Belly. Belly criticizes Jeremiah for being flighty, for not really knowing what to do with his life, for having fun. Again, something that she faulted Taylor for. She wants everyone to be serious all the time, and it kind of gets to a point where you're like, Belly, you're kind of being a Debbie Downer right now. You're being a little party pooper. Just let people have fun. So for the first couple of chapters, Belly catches us up on what has happened. Conrad is at a different college. He's studying to become a doctor. Jeremiah's in a fraternity. She's a homebody. And Taylor and her are still friends, but they're not as close as they used to be because Belly hangs out with Jeremiah all the time. And then she informs us about the nature of her and Jeremiah's relationship. We had started dating right before I began senior year of high school. Dating didn't feel like the right word for it. We were just together. It all happened so easily and so quickly that it felt like it had always been that way. One minute we were friends and we were kissing, and then the next thing I knew, I was applying to the same college as him. Why am I not surprised? I just wanted to be near him. I wanted him for all the seasons, not just summer. So at least they have a pretty healthy relationship, I will say, for the most part. And even though she says that he doesn't really know what he wants to do, he still has a sense of direction because he is a Nepo baby and his father has a company. He's going to intern there. This summer, he would be interning at his dad's company again, and I was going to waitress at a family restaurant called Bears, the same as I did last summer. Our plan was to meet at the summer house in Cousins as often as we could. Last summer, we hadn't made it out there once. Okay, that's fine. It's not like you fought for this house and pretended like you're going to be there every waking hour only to abandon it and never go back. Great. So Taylor is also going to the same school as her, and she's part of the sorority, so she and Jeremiah are kind of seeing each other quite often. And Belly has made new friends in Annika and Shay, who we're going to see routinely throughout the story. I misspoke about the timeline of the relationship. They've only been together for 2 years. My apologies for that. Because Belly is dating a frat boy, she usually is invited to these parties, and Taylor is also there because she's part of the sister sorority, so they're spending a lot of time together just at parties, so Belly is trying to be a little bit more social. But she is still not above slut-shaming, and of course she cannot help but create an invisible competition between her and other women, especially between certain sororities. According to Taylor, Zeta Phi was for party girls and sluts, as opposed to her sorority, which is allegedly classier and more exclusive. And again, I know this is actually Taylor's words, but you say that because I think deep down you also kind of believe it. And then this is where we're introduced to a girl named Lacey. So keep Lacey in the back of your mind because she's someone that is flirting with Jeremiah, and she's going to be a part of a very big scene later. And Belly is very confident in Jeremiah, and she knows that he would never cheat on her. I knew him better than anyone, the same as he knew me, and I knew Jer would never look at another girl. So even she knows that Jeremy is very stable. He is a very good boyfriend. So Belly is at this party with Jeremiah and his fraternity. Now, of course, she is not like other girls, and she doesn't really like partying, but she wants to be there with Jeremiah because she's a good girlfriend and she just wants to spend time with him. He spends a lot of time at parties with his frat bros, right? Obviously, she spends time with him, so she has to spend time with them as well. Well, she spills something on her dress, and when she goes to the bathroom to clean it up, Lacey, the girl from earlier, comes in with her friends, or she overhears, like, they're in adjacent rooms together. So Belly is listening to their conversation, and she hears Lacey say, "He looks hot tonight," right? And this is in reference to Jeremiah. And then another girl says, "He always looks hot." "Hell yeah, he does." The other girl said, "I'm so jealous he got to hook up with him." In a sing-song voice, Lacey said, "Whatever happens in Cabo, stays in Cabo." A bit of context, Jeremiah went to Cabo with his frat boys and some girls, I guess, and he ended up hooking up with Lacey while on that trip, and Belly is upset that Jeremiah did this, so she goes and confronts him. Now, in her mind, he cheated on her, but I want to make sure that we all hear this because it's very important, because he didn't cheat on her. And this is proof that he did not do that. So she goes to find him and he asks her what's going on. I practically spat the words out. "Did you hook up with Lacey Barron during spring break?" Jeremiah's face turned white. "What? Did you hook up with her?" "Belly." "I knew it," I whispered. "I knew it. Even though I didn't know it, not really. I didn't know anything." "Hold on. Just hold on. Hold on," I screamed. "Oh my god, Jer. Oh my god." I sank onto the floor. My legs couldn't even hold me up. Jeremiah kneeled down beside me and tried to help me up, but I slapped his hands away. "Don't touch me." And now she's getting physical with him. Great. This is always a sign of a healthy way to confront your partner. He got down on the floor next to me, his head hanging between his knees. "Belly, it was when we were on that break. When we were broken up."
I didn't think there was a relationship to jeopardize. I thought we were broken up.
We were on a break.
That, for all I knew, could last forever. That, to me, is a break up.
So let me get this straight. Belly is upset that Jeremiah, after their tumultuous breakup, went and hooked up with another girl. Little PSA from your friendly neighborhood book vlogger. When you break up with someone, they are no longer beholden to you in that loyalty way. You have no claim over them. They can go do whatever they want. They are no longer a part of your life, and they can go hang out and do whatever they want. They can go sleep with other people. They can go hook up with other people. Belly feels so possessive and territorial over the Fisher boys that she is upset at any girl who dares to look, touch, or talk about them. And it's insane. And later on, we get a sense of why they broke up, and it's very clear that they did officially break up. The reason why Belly is upset about this is because she's upset that Jeremiah had the audacity and the gall to not be spending the entire week crying over his breakup, instead going off and having a good time with his boys and hanging out with some girls. That's why she's really upset. She's upset that she was the one staying at home miserable while he went out and had fun. And again, she could have gone on this trip with him, but instead she decided to start a fight and break up with him. So Belly informs us, our so-called breakup had lasted all of a week. It wasn't even a real breakup, not for me. Why didn't you communicate that? Why would you do that? She says, I always assumed we would get back together. I had cried the whole week while he had been in Cabo kissing Lacey Barone. Is it Barone or Baroni? Belly tries to gaslight him a little by telling him that he should have known it wasn't a real breakup, because apparently Jeremiah has slowly developed the ability to read her mind. You knew we weren't really broken up. You knew it wasn't real. Miserably, he said, how was I supposed to know that?
Okay, I thought our relationship was dead.
Well, you sure had a hell of a time at the wake.
If I knew it, you should have known it. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why I hate Belly. Because she's a horrible partner who breaks up with her boyfriend for no reason and then gets mad at him when he goes off and kisses other girls because in her mind they're not really broken up. This is a person who does not live on this plane. She is not here with us on this frequency of reality. She is off in Delulu land, and it's insane that she is mad at Jeremiah for her lack of communication. And then in chapter 5, we finally learned the reason behind why they broke up. When we broke up in April, okay, now she's actually saying that they broke up, it really did come out of nowhere. Yes, we'd have little fights here and there, but you could hardly even call them fights. That's because you started every single one, Belly. And just to prove that, here's one fight that she started, all because Jeremiah likes to have hobbies outside of their relationship. Shay was having a party at her godmother's country house. I told Jeremiah about it, and he said he had an intramural soccer game, but I should go anyway. I said, can't you just miss it? It's not like it's a real game. What a loving and supporting partner she is. It was a bitchy thing to say, but I said it and I meant it. That was our first fight. Started by Belly, but okay. And then she gets upset about the fact that he has seasonal allergies. You know, something that people can totally control. He called me, sneezing like crazy, all stuffed up and pitiful. Can you come over and hang out with me? Can you bring more Kleenex and orange juice? Asking a partner, hey, can you help me? Can you support me in my time of need? Completely normal. And then she says, I really want to come over. No, she doesn't. But I have a paper that's due tomorrow, so I probably shouldn't. Sorry. I said, trying to sound conflicted about it. And he says, well, I guess I could go there. I'll take a ton of Benadryl and sleep while you write. Then maybe we can order Indian food again. Yeah, I said sourly, we could do that. So now she's lamenting about all the extra work she'll have to do just to take care of Jeremiah. I would have to go to the hall bathroom and get a roll of toilet paper because Jillian would be pissed if Jeremiah used all her Kleenex again. And that was their first real fight. And then the reason why they got into a fight in the first place was because Belly was upset that Jeremiah was going to Cabo with his friends for spring break. I wanted to be at home, I really did, but as I watched Jeremiah book his trip, I felt more and more resentful. He was supposed to be going home too. Now that Conrad was in California, Mr. Fisher was pretty much alone. Jeremiah had said he wanted to go and spend some time with him, maybe visit Susanna's grave together. We'd also talked about going to Cousins for a couple of days. Jeremiah knew how much I wanted to go to Cousins. He knew how much it meant to me. I'd done more growing up in that house than I had in my own. And with Susanna gone, it felt even more important that we kept going back. So they do go back occasionally. The year before, I guess they couldn't. And now Jeremiah is throwing in a wrench in their plans, which is rather upsetting, but it's also like, you've been going to Cousins for every year, and you can go to Cabo with your boyfriend. I'm sure he would pay for everything. I don't know why he's going with his frat boys and why he didn't invite you, but still. And then he says, it's too good of a deal to pass up. Besides, all my brothers are going. I can't miss out. And then she's upset that he doesn't want to go home to Cousins and see his dad. And he's like, well, we could do that over summer break. Yeah, like, you're going to spend the whole summer break in Cousins. Why do you need to go every single break you have? It just, again, I understand that it's hard to have your boyfriend or your partner go on a trip without you, but at the same time, He wants to hang out with his friends. I get it. It is tough being separated from your partner, but if he wants to go to Cabo, maybe you can ask him if you can tag along. There will be girls there, believe me. And then she gets upset. She says, summer's still 6 months away. I cross my arms then, uncross them. I'm guessing she picked up a lot of those emotional cues from Conrad. Jeremiah frowned. What's this about? Are you worried about me going on spring break without you? She says, no. I just think that it would be nice if you spent some time with your dad. And your mom's headstone is up. I thought you wanted to go see it. Yeah, I do, but I can do all that after school's out. You can come with me. And then he makes a joke, and then Belly is obviously not laughing. And then she says, you know I can't afford it to go to Cabo. So he did offer her to go to Cabo with him, which sounds like a great trip. Just go, Belly. Sounds fun. Besides, I don't want to go to Cabo with you and your bros. I'm not going to go be the only girlfriend and drag down your party. And then he tells her, you wouldn't be. Josh's girlfriend Allison is going to be there. And then she gets upset that she wasn't originally invited and then Allison was. And then Jeremiah says, actually, the sorority is coming too. So it's a boys and girls co-ed trip. So it's not just the boys going, it's also the girls. Yes, Jeremiah probably should have told her about that earlier. Yes, he should have invited her to go as well. But again, it just feels like Belly is making mountains out of molehills because he isn't Conrad, and she's upset that he isn't Conrad, and she's punishing him for it. And Belly says, I'm not going to Cabo. I'm going home. My mom misses me. And then she says, your dad misses you too. And he says, oh my God, Belly, just admit that this isn't about my dad. You're paranoid about me going on spring break without you. And then she gets upset and blows up at him. And then she says, have fun with the Zetas. So the slut group at the school. And then Jeremiah gets upset at her because she should be able to trust him. If you don't trust me by now, I don't know what to tell you. I've never done anything to make you question me, and Belly, I really don't need you guilt-tripping me about my dad. No matter what, parents are gonna miss you. My parents were sad to see me go to college, but I still visited them. Parents understand. They're always going to miss you whenever you're away, but you'll have plenty of time this summer to hang out with them. And then she says, I can't believe how selfish you are. Me, I'm the selfish one now? And then she blows up at him and she says, yes, you are definitely the selfish one. It's always about you, your friends, your stupid fraternity. Have I told you I think your fraternity is stupid? And he says, what's so stupid about it? It's just a bunch of entitled rich guys spending their parents' money, cheating on tests with your test bank. I guess that's a study guide or like the test answers that they all share together, and going to class wasted. He says, looking hurt. We're not all like that. I didn't mean you. Yeah, you did. What, just because I'm not pre-med that makes me a lazy frat guy? So he knows that on some level, Belly still loves Conrad, and she always compares the two of them, and which isn't fair. And this is also why you shouldn't date brothers. And then, of course, she agrees that Conrad is more committed to having a career than him and has direction. It was something I had thought about but never voiced. Conrad was the one who was pre-med. Conrad was the one at Stanford working a part-time job at a lab. Jeremiah was the one who told people he majored in virology. So it's very clear that Belly does not respect Jeremiah. She does not respect his choices, his autonomy, his hobbies, his likes, his dislikes. And yes, like dating a man in a fraternity does come with a lot of extra baggage along with that. There is a lot of history with men in fraternities and how they treat women in sororities, etc. Hazing, the rituals, all that stuff. But at the same time, if it makes him happy, shouldn't you be happy for him? It's also given you an avenue, open up a lot of connections, and it also gets you out of the house. You go to those parties too, Belly, so I don't know why you're acting like you're superior to these people. And then she says, don't put your inferiority complex on me, assuming that he has an inferiority complex because he's not as good as Conrad, because again, she thinks Conrad is better. Jeremiah says, what the hell does that mean, inferiority complex? Because again, Jeremiah is not insecure. He's very secure in himself. He loves himself, unlike Conrad, and he doesn't feel the need to constantly punish people around him because of his lack of security. And then Belly says, forget it. If you think I'm so stupid and selfish and wasteful, why are you even with me? Look, like, this makes sense. This is Jeremiah asking her, if you hate me so much, why are you dating me? It's very obvious that she still loves Conrad. And before Belly can answer, he says, fuck it, I won't waste your time anymore. Let's end it now. So at least Jeremiah doesn't like to drag things out, and he is the one who broke up with Belly, even though, let's be real here, it was going to happen regardless. So she spends the entire spring break moping around, missing Jeremiah, and then when he gets back, she tries to make up with him. Jer brought me back a shell bracelet, little white puka shells, and made me so happy because I knew that he had been thinking of me, that he had missed me as much as I missed him. But now I knew the truth. He bought me that stupid cheap bracelet because he felt guilty, and I was so desperate to make up. I hadn't seen it. Guilty for what? for being a single guy and having fun with his friends. I never like it whenever people go on breaks. First of all, going on a break, you need to be very clear with your partner that, hey, we are not going to be seeing other people. This is just us taking some space to reevaluate our relationship. However, you guys broke up officially, and you're upset that he had the audacity to hang out with another girl. So the thing that pisses me off the most is Belly tells her friends, and they're upset on her behalf, and then this is when she has a flashback to Christmas break when she went to Cousins spur of the moment without Jeremiah, and Conrad was there, her ex-boyfriend, and she was hanging out with him, and it's obvious that they were still flirting, and they were still very much into each other. And in Belly's mind, it's okay if she hangs out with Conrad behind Jeremiah's back and never tells him, but when Jeremiah breaks up with her, goes to kiss another girl, comes back, and they make up, and they get back together, that's bad. Ridiculous, honestly. Oh yeah, and it's revealed that Conrad may or may not have cheated on her. Oh, but it's okay when he does it, not when Jeremiah does it. The double standards in this book are ridiculous. So, and then, of course, her friends threaten to hurt him, because of course, and then Taylor is trying to help her, make her feel better, and then Belly misses Jeremiah because she literally can never in her life be in a place where she is without one of the Fisher boys. Always has to be one or the other. And they want to get back together, and then Jeremiah gets down on one knee right in front of me. Very softly he said, "You can marry me." This is a solution to their problem. This is how Jeremiah is going to prove to her that she can trust him. And Belly is not exactly sure what she wants. He reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out a ring, a silver ring with a little diamond in the center. This would just be for starters until I could afford to pay for a ring myself with my money, not my dad's. So another critique I have of weddings in general, and more specifically the classism surrounding weddings and the ring. I have seen a lot of videos focusing on, oh, it's so sad that Jeremiah got such a small ring. What an idiot, what a loser, that he couldn't even afford like a big ring. Can I be slightly petty for just a minute? Just 1 minute. People who critique men for not getting big enough rings for their fiance, their wives, etc. are people who don't have wedding rings. No offense, but a little offense. If your main focus when getting married is how other people perceive you and your wealth surrounding vain things like how big your wedding ring is, how beautiful your gown is, how many people are at your wedding, those kinds of things, the aesthetics behind a wedding, if that matters more to you than who you're marrying, that speaks volumes about the kind of person that you are and what you truly value. If you value how you look to other people more than who you're marrying and why you're getting married, maybe you shouldn't be getting married. It's a big commitment, and yes, a lot of people value the wedding more than their relationship, and it shows because those relationships do not last, because it's all about the money. I'm pretty sure there's a statistic that says the more expensive the wedding, the higher the chance of divorce. Money doesn't buy you a good relationship or a good marriage. You have to go into a marriage thinking, this is what it's really about. This person I'm getting married to, this matters more to me than the wedding. Yes, you can care about a wedding. Yes, everyone wants their wedding to be magical and fun and amazing. I'm not saying you shouldn't want a great wedding. That's completely fine. What I don't like is when people value the monetary benefits of getting married and the wedding itself over the marriage. It's not a wedding fashion show. You're not there to show off your wealth to people. It's there to celebrate your marriage. I don't know why we're getting twisted about that. And like Jeremiah said here, hey, this is just a starter ring. When I grow up and get a job, I can get you a new ring. That happens. A lot of people, when they get married young, they don't have a lot of money to afford a nice big giant ring. So what do? 5-year anniversary, 10-year, 20-year anniversary, they give their wife a different ring. Or, I know this sounds a little bit countercultural right now, the woman can buy herself her own ring. Or you and your fiance can go together to the ring shop and pick one out together. Just saying, I don't like it when people criticize other people for not having a big enough ring. Plus, big enough rings are way too gaudy, in my opinion, and you get stuck on sweaters so often, it's not great. And then Belly accepts his marriage proposal. She says, yes, I'll marry you. Then the next chapter, that night I dreamed of Conrad. Because of course, that's the real person she wants to marry. So now that they're engaged, they have to go about telling people, and now planning for the wedding. And Taylor, who just proves herself time and time again that she is a superior best friend, offers her services as a free wedding coordinator for Belly because Belly just doesn't want to deal with it. As someone who planned a wedding recently. I have to be honest with you guys, planning the wedding was probably one of the most anxiety-inducing, stressful things I've ever had to go through. And I got help. My mother helped me, my siblings helped me, my husband helped me a little, and I had people on my side doing their best to help me as much as they could to really alleviate all the pressure on me. And it was very nice. I'm super grateful for all the things that my family did to help me. I will say that was the least fun part of having a wedding is planning it. And I can relate to Belly on some level that at one point, I just sat down and I don't want to do any of this. This is just too much. And then Taylor reminds Belly about her initial wedding plans. You wanted 5 bridesmaids and a 4-tier carrot cake. You wanted an ice sculpture of a human heart with your initials carved into it, which, by the way, is gross. You wanted a live band and crab cakes and a balloon drop after your first dance. What was that song you wanted to dance to? Stay by Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs, she said. So Taylor remembers everything that Belly told her about her dream wedding, and she says, I was really touched that she remembered. But I guess I remembered everything Taylor wanted too. Doves, little lace gloves, hot pink stiletto heels. That's all you remember? Okay. And then Taylor tells her, you should have everything you want, Belly. You only get married once. Okay. It's not true, but okay. And so she and Taylor are brainstorming, and then Belly is super grateful for her. And then she says, I want you to be my maid of honor, okay? Tears filled her eyes. I'm so honored. Taylor Jewel, my oldest friend in the world, we've been through some times together, and you now is pure grace if we managed to come out on the other side. Not for a lack of trying. So she tells her friends, she tells her family, everyone's a little bit reticent because they are very young, they are still in college, they have no job prospects, they don't really have a lot of money, and now they are getting everything together. And then once they finally tell all their friends, they get to the business of telling their parents, right? And this is where it gets a little interesting. So they're all together and they're about to make the grandiose announcement with all their family there. So Steven's there, Conrad's there, Laurel's there. And as they're about to make the announcement, Jeremiah says, I have something to say. And then Belly, of course, because she's so in love with Conrad, she snuck a look over at Conrad. He had his arm draped over the back of Steven's chair and they'd been laughing about something. His face was easy and relaxed. I had this wild impulse to stop Jeremiah, clap my hand over his mouth, and keep him from saying it. Everybody was so happy this was going to wreck it. Okay? You could just wait to get married. You don't have to get married now. Just saying. Long engagements exist. I'll just go ahead and warn you, it's really good news. Jeremiah flashed a smile at everyone, and I braced myself. He was being too glib. God forbid a man is excited about being engaged to the love of his life. Apparently, to Belly, it's being too glib. Because Conrad wouldn't act that way. He wouldn't be excited to marry her at all. I asked Belly to marry me, and she said yes. She said yes, we're getting married this August. It was like the restaurant got really quiet all of a sudden. Like all the noise and chatter got sucked out of the room. Everything just stopped. I looked across the table at my mother. Her face was ashen. Steven choked on the water he was drinking. Coughing, he said, what the? And Conrad, his face was completely blank. It was surreal. Then Mr. Fisher says, I think we need a few more minutes. Talking to the waiter. And then Laurel, her mother, says, are you pregnant? I felt all the blood rush to my cheeks. Beside me, I could feel rather than hear Jeremiah choke. She says, I don't believe this. How many times we discussed contraception, Isabel? So this is Laurel reprimanding her for allegedly getting pregnant. Then Belly is mortified. She assures her mother, I'm not pregnant. And then Belly says, we wanted to get married, Mom, because it wasn't just about her being pregnant. They're not being forced into this. And Laurel says, you're too young. You're both far too young. Which is true. And then Laurel says, you two are not getting married, period. You're both still in school, for God's sake. It's ridiculous. Mr. Fisher says, maybe after you kids both graduate, we can discuss it again. The parents are not very happy about it. So Laurel is very upset, and then she forces them to leave, and Mr. Fisher walks away with Jeremiah, which is kind of sad. Yes, they're technically your kids, but they're also adults. And then as they leave, her mother says, you're returning that ring, Isabel. And then Belly says, if I back down now, everything was lost. I had to be strong. I'm not returning it, I said. Kind of delving into the sunk cost fallacy a little bit here, which is I've invested too much time and I have to do this, otherwise my relationship with Jeremiah is over. So the rest of the book is basically just Belly talking her mother down off the ledge, allowing her to give her blessing and the go-ahead to have the wedding. So the entire book is just the wedding planning, the bridal shower, the bachelorette party, etc. And then tensions really run high when it's very clear to Jeremiah that Belly is still in love with Conrad. And we're in the last, I would say, 20% of the book here. And then they have a fight. So Belly and Jeremiah, they are sitting down, they're talking. They just had a conversation about Conrad. And Jeremiah is just not very happy because he knows that Belly is still in love with him and he just can't take it. So Jeremiah asks her, why are you protecting him. I'm not, she assures him. He looked down at me. Are you marrying me to erase him? No, I said, and it came out more like a gasp. The thing is, Bells, I don't believe you, Jeremiah said, and his voice was strangely flat. I see the way you look at him. I don't think you've ever looked at me like that. Not even once. And then he drops this little bomb right here. I know you saw him over Christmas. I know you guys were together here. So once again, Belly, being a hypocrite, kept a secret from Jeremiah, which she accused him of doing with him and Lacey. And then, in my mind, she emotionally cheated on him because she's still in love with him. It's very obvious, but it's okay when Belly steps outside of their relationship, but it's bad when Jeremiah does it. This is honestly why I don't like Belly, and I think she and Conrad deserve each other. And then she tries to assure him that nothing happened, and he said, if it was nothing, you would have told me about it. True. Instead, you kept it a secret. After all that stuff you said to me about trust, you kept that to yourself. I felt like shit for what I did with Lacey, and you and I weren't even together when it happened. And then she gets mad and she's like, oh, so you just knew about it the whole time and didn't tell me? Once again, deflecting all the blame onto Jeremiah instead of admitting that she did anything wrong. And then later on in the story, on page 271, Jeremiah and Conrad get into a fight because they both love Belly, and Jeremiah knows that Conrad still loves Belly, and he's very upset at him. So he says, I'm going back, he finally said, but not with you. You're not my brother anymore. You're dead to me. I don't want you at my wedding. I don't want you in my life. I want you gone. Because Conrad has basically been trying to get back into Belly's good graces, and he admits to Jeremiah, I love her. I admit it. Sometimes I think she's the only girl I could ever be with. But Jer, she picked you. You're the one she wants to marry, not me. In this scene, Conrad is trying to assure Jeremiah that Belly loves him and she chose him, and Conrad gives Jeremiah a letter that Susanna wrote for him. However, he gives Jeremiah the wrong letter, and he gives him his letter from Susanna. And in that letter, Susanna basically says that she knows that Belly and Conrad are going to end up together, which is horrible. Poor Jeremiah. And then he gets upset and then he runs away. And then Conrad reads the letter and then he gets upset and he cries. So yeah, very emotional moment for the two of them. And then Conrad, being Conrad, because he cannot stay out of the narrative, he goes behind his brother's back and basically declares his love for Belly. Conrad held the necklace out to me. Softly he said, it belongs to you, always has. I was too afraid to give it to you then. Consider it an early birthday gift. So he's giving her the infinity necklace, basically telling her that I'll love you forever. If we were together, we would have infinity, which of course was a lie at the time. But now he's saying, I'm sorry for screwing up. I hurt you. And for that, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm not going to stay for the wedding. I'm just going to take off now. I won't see you again, not for a long time. Probably for the best. Being near you like this, it hurts. And he says, I need you to know that no matter what happens, it was worth it to me. Being with you, loving you, it was all worth it. I wish you both the best. Take good care of each other. Proving that he is once again the worst brother, because why on earth would you say this to your brother's fiance the night before they're getting married? He knew what he was doing. This was just awful. Don't declare your love for your brother's fiance the night before their wedding, okay? Even if you mean it, it's not about you. You're just going to make everything so much worse. And then the day of the wedding, Jeremy shows up to her room. He knocks on her door. She invites him in. And this is when Jeremiah confirms with himself that she's in love with Conrad and not him. He tells her, I want all of you. I want every part, but you're still holding back from me. And he says, I don't have your whole heart. Be honest. I'm right, aren't I? Belly denies it because it's a cost fallacy. She's already there in the white dress. She's about to get married. She doesn't want to give that up. And he says, how do you think it makes me feel knowing I'm second choice? Knowing it was always supposed to be you too. She says, you're not my second choice. You're first. Jeremiah shook his head. No, I'll never be first. That'll always be meaning Conrad. I thought I could do this, but I can't. You can't what? You can't marry me? And then Belly tries to reason with him. Okay, maybe we won't get married today. Maybe some other time. Maybe in a few years. And then she says, Jer, I love you. He says, that's not what I'm asking. I know you love me. What I'm asking is, do you love him too? I wanted to tell him no. I opened my mouth. Why wouldn't the words come out? Why couldn't I just say what he needed to hear? It would be so easy to just say it. One word and this would all go away. He wanted to forgive and forget it all. I could see in his face, all he needed was for me to tell him no. He would still marry me if I would just say the word, one word. So she confesses, yes, she still loves Conrad. All my life I never felt like I had a choice when it came to Conrad. Now I knew it wasn't true. I did have a choice. I chose to walk away then and now. I chose Jeremiah. I chose the boy who would never walk away from me. But that's not fair to Jeremiah. You can't give him your whole heart, so he deserves someone who can't. Then he says that's not enough. I don't just want a part of you, I want all of you. And then he tells her about the letter that he got from Susanna, but he actually got Conrad's letter instead. In the letter, she said she only ever got to see him in love once. That was with you. I won't be the reason you don't go to him. I won't be your excuse. You've got to see for yourself, or you'll never be able to let him go. And then she says, I already have, which is a lie. He tells her, no, you haven't. The worst part is, I knew you had it, and I still asked you to marry me, so I guess I'm partly to blame too, huh? It's not your fault, Jeremiah. Poor baby. It's not your fault. And then he says he will let you down because that's what he does. That's who he is. So he is being a bit petty here, but he is truthful. Like Conrad always lets people down. That's just how he is. And then Belly says, for the rest of my life, I was going to remember those words. Everything Jeremiah said to me that day, our wedding day, I would remember. I'd remember the words Jeremiah said and the way he looked at me when he said them, with pity and with bitterness. I hated myself for being the one who made him bitter because that was the only thing he'd never been. At least she finally admits that she brings out the worst in people. That's always fun. And then she ends this particular chapter with saying, another thing that didn't happen that day, Jeremiah and I didn't get married. It wouldn't have been right, not for either of us. I love how she's acting like that's a mutual decision that was being made, even though she was begging him to just go through with it anyway. Alright, moving on. Sometimes I wondered if we had rushed into getting married because we were both trying to prove something to the other, maybe even to ourselves. But then I think, no, we truly did love each other. We truly did have the best of intentions. And then the book ends with a time jump for a couple of years later. Belly actually went and studied abroad. She went to Spain. Shout out to Spain. And she had lots and lots of adventures, which we of course will never hear about because there's only 5 pages left in this book. And then this is where she and Conrad rekindled their relationship. Spain is where I got my first letter from him. Real letters written by his hand, not emails. I didn't write him back, not at first, but they still came once a month, every month. The first time I saw him again, it was another year, at my college graduation. And I just knew. A young man, so she calls him my young man, okay, is kind and good and strong, just like you said. But he doesn't kiss me like Rhett kissed Scarlett. He kisses me even better. And there's another thing you were right about. He does have the last name Fisher. So this is her talking to Susanna in her mind. And then the next page, she is getting married to Conrad, and Jeremiah is there, I guess. I look out the window and there's Jer across the lawn. He has his arm around his date and our eyes meet. He gives me a small wave. I wave back and blow him a kiss. He smiles and turns back to his date. Weird interaction, but okay. And so she and Conrad, after this, they get married. I'm wearing the dress my mother and I picked out together. Creamy white with lace cap sleeves and low back. My hair that we spent an hour pinning up is falling out of the side bun, and long wet strands of hair are flying around my face as we run for the car in the pouring rain. Balloons are everywhere. My shoes are off. I am barefoot, holding his gray suit jacket over my head. He's got one high but not too high heel in each hand. He runs ahead of me and opens a car door. We are just married. This is our start. This is the moment it becomes real. We are married. We are infinite. Me and Conrad. The first boy I ever slow danced with, ever cried over, ever loved. And then the story ends with us getting the letters that Conrad sent to Belly. And oh my gosh, there is some low-level incel undertones in these letters. Listen to this. This is weird writing to you like this. I think the last time I wrote someone an actual letter, that was a thank you card to my grandma. For graduation money, I think. My mom was big on thank you cards. Oh boy, the way you're welcome for junior mint. Oh yeah, and then he says, oh, by the way, you're welcome for junior mint. So he sent her her stuffed animal that she had in Cousins, and she didn't give him a thank you card back, and he's like, oh, by the way, you're welcome. Way to be passive aggressive, Conrad. My goodness, she doesn't owe you anything.
Be aggressive! Passive aggressive!
Lord told me you said thanks. Geez, I was hoping for a thank you card, but I guess we can't all be as polite as me. And she chose this guy over Jeremiah. God. Can you imagine treating a girl like absolute shit? Ladies, can you imagine for 1 minute? A guy treats you like absolute shit, ruins your first prom night, basically ruins your potential marriage with his brother, and then years later, after he basically upended your life, broke your heart, destroyed your marriage to another man that you loved. So imagine that this man who did all these horrible things basically uprooted your life to the point where you had to flee the country. Flee is a strong word, but you understand what I meant. And then he writes you letters and expects you to write him back, your ex-boyfriend, and he's passive-aggressive and making fun of you. I would throw them out. At this point, this is ridiculous. Next entry. So far, I've written you 2 letters and you've written none, which is fine. Go ahead and feel free not to write me back. Seriously, don't feel obligated or anything. Next letter. You didn't write back. I thought for sure you would. You used to be so bad at following directions. Now look at you. Kidding. Oh, and then he gets upset that she's hanging out with another guy. Love this. Laura showed me pictures of when she came to visit you. I want to go there someday. I heard you aren't hanging out with that guy Benito anymore. Don't say I didn't warn you. Excellent. Also, in case I haven't made it clear, I think about you a lot. You're pretty much all I think about. Just so we're clear. Future doctors of America, ladies and gentlemen. And this man is a doc. How about you focus on your patients, sir, instead of a woman who's trying to avoid you? Oh, and then he makes fun of her again. At Christmas time, no less. I went to the summer house for a few days. I kept thinking I'd turn around and see you overstuffing your face with chocolate pretzels, or sliding around the downstairs living room in those god-awful mistletoe pajama pants. That's one way to win over a woman, is insult her. That's a great idea. And that is it. That's the person that she got married to. Alright everyone, that was the Summer I Turned Pretty series, all the summaries for those god-awful books. I don't think it's that much of a mystery what I rated these books in total. The first book, I did give it a 2 out of 5 stars. At the time, I thought it was the better of the series. That was the only book that didn't make me want to pull out my hair with my hands. The second book and the third book, I did give a 1 out of 5 stars just because they were so anger-inducing, and I just hated the entitlement. I hated how Belly was treating everyone around her, including Jeremiah and Conrad. I hated Conrad. He is the worst part of this book series, that's for sure. And now we can get into the review portion of this video. I feel like I did make it perfectly clear the things that I enjoyed and didn't like, but let's just review those really quickly together. First things first, the thing I actually liked about this series was Taylor's character development. She went from being this pretentious, overbearing best friend who just seemed very self-centered and selfish and way too boy crazy, and then she became a very supportive friend of Belly, helped her with her planning for a wedding that never happened, for free, by the way. She was super happy with Belly, even though she probably didn't agree with what Belly was doing with her life. At least she was able to call her out on her bullshit. She also called Conrad out on his bullshit. She doesn't take things lying down. I think that's why Conrad didn't like her, is because Taylor actually has a backbone and Belly is a doormat. Also, I will say I really did like Susanna. Her character, for the most part, was very interesting. I feel like her entire plotline with her cancer diagnosis and just the way that she treats Belly like the daughter that she never had, I really enjoyed her up to a certain point until she started favoring her own children. One child in particular. I do not know why people like Conrad so much. It annoys the crap out of me. He doesn't deserve all this love. I hate it. I don't understand it. That's pretty much the only things that I enjoyed about this series, other than the fact that these books were relatively short and easy to read. That's pretty much it. Things I hated. Conrad, Belly, and the entire fake cheating storyline that happened in the third book. Basically, everything that these kids did was just so exhausting. I hated how they felt entitled to each other. I hated how they treated, the traitors like Cam and other women coming in like they were possessive of each other, very territorial. I hated how it was a love triangle involving two brothers. I hated how Conrad treated her in the second book and how she still let him walk all over her. In the third book, the letters were truly disgusting. The fact that he felt entitled to her time and her love, and everything about the series was just so cringeworthy. I just hated it. Belly was probably one of the worst protagonists I've read in a young adult series like this one, and it's mostly just because she just refuses to change, grow up, and try to be a better version of herself, because everything that she does gets reinforced and people enable her. She enables other people like Conrad, and it's just kind of sad to see that. No matter what you do, you're gonna be stuck on this one guy who treats you terribly, who doesn't respect you and your boundaries. It doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I feel like I made my thoughts perfectly clear. I feel like no one leaving this video is going to be at all questioning my opinions on the Fisher boys and how I feel about Belly and just the whole ordeal. I was just very disappointed by this series because as someone who used to be a teenager, growing up and reading books like this, I think set up an unfortunate precedent for how I viewed relationships in my adult years. I feel like a lot of young people reading these books, it just worries me, and I know that sounds like I'm acting like an overbearing helicopter parent, but it's kind of sad when books like this really romanticize terrible people like Conrad and setting a lot of young adults up for failure. I don't want girls to look at Conrad and think that this is the standard we should be holding men up to. I haven't seen the show. I know the character assassinated Jeremiah, so he looked worse compared to Conrad, and that's the worst thing you can do. If you have to ruin someone's character to make the other potential love interest look better, you failed. And it's very obvious when people like one character over the other, then maybe they should be with that character. So I found that to be incredibly frustrating that everyone is now Team Conrad and everyone hates Jeremiah, when in the books it's a very different story. Conrad is the obvious bad one here, and Jeremiah should have been endgame, but he wasn't, because let's be real here, he deserves better than Belly. And I hate saying that because, again, she's a fictional character, a young woman, and I try my best to be team girl when it comes to books like this, but I just can't. I can't stand behind Belly. I can't support her. I hope Taylor has a nice, amazing love life. I hope that she's happy in a marriage that works out for her, or whatever she chooses to do with her life. I really wish that we got to see more of her than Belly, because I found her way more interesting of a character, but oh well. And I will say that it's not the character itself that I have a problem with too, it's also Jenny Han's portrayal of her. I read her books, but then I watch the movie adaptations or the TV show adaptations, and I like those more. Maybe because they're more modern, they're more palatable for a larger audience, but I would recommend that if you were interested in either reading the books, watching the show, you should watch the show. It is better in my opinion. The one episode that I saw, it was a breath of fresh air, and the books To All the Boys I Loved Before, I didn't like them as much as the movies because again, the characters are much better on the silver screen, because again, the characters are much better because the studios, the writers, and the directors just made them less insufferable than their book counterparts. So I know that's a very sacrilegious thing to say. As a book lover myself, I don't like saying it, but in these cases with the Jenny Han books, the movies and the shows do better justice to her characters and her stories than the cold hard prose does. And that's the end of the video, my friends. I am looking forward to never having to talk about these characters ever again, and it's such a disappointment. I really wish this series ended on a different note, but oh well. And if you made it to the end of this video, make sure to leave a sun emoji in the comments. Let me know what you thought about the TV show versus the books. Have you read the books? Have you watched the show? What do you think? Let me know your opinions down below. Any controversial hot takes between the brothers? Are you Team Conrad? Are you Team Jeremiah? Or are you Team Belly? Are you Team Stephen and Taylor? Because they're my favorite couple of the series so far. I wish that was more of a book thing, but we got in the TV show, so I'm happy about that. And of course, don't forget to keep reading. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.